Chapter 1374. Come here, come here. A summoning voice came from the soul, piercing through space-time to resound in the thought body's mind. This summoning voice was extremely intimate and familiar, calming the thought body's rage and making him calmer and more rational. JLC, what's going on with this person? Where are Xian Wuheng's group? Ancient God Ice Jade coldly asked. When Ancient God JLC sent out a call for help, he said that he was being pursued by Xian Wuheng and Zhao Feng's group. For this reason, Ancient God Ice Jade immediately led her team over, naturally hoping to take the credit for this mission. But when she arrived, she only saw Ancient God Chungyun. Ancient God Ice Jade had sensed Ancient God Chungyun's situation and was able to see it, but she still didn't care about him. They've run. This person is also a member of the Giant God race. Kill him first. Ancient God JLC immediately said. Ancient God Qingyun had ruined his plans time and time again, and he was extremely troublesome. No matter what he did, he couldn't get rid of him. Ancient God JLC was truly annoyed beyond belief. Ancient God JLC now hated Ancient God Chungyun even more than he hated Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng. Truly useless. Let's see how you explain this to the Hall Master. Ancient God Ice Jade shot Ancient God JLC a disdainful glance. It was obvious that Ancient God JLC had found Xian Wuheng long ago, but for his own selfish reasons, he had not informed the others. If he had successfully completed the mission, it would have been fine, but Ancient God JLC had failed, and he had suffered such a miserable defeat that 2 of his team members had been killed. Ancient God JLC fell silent. This was also what he was worried about, but he still had a chance to redeem himself. As long as he performed well in the following mission and played an important role in taking back the Ancient God seal, he was confident that the Hall Master and God Lord Stellar aspect would not punish him. Ancient God Ice Jade moved forward and looked at Ancient God Chungyun. Since this person was already under the control of the thought body, why was he still targeting Ancient Soul Hall with such hatred? At this moment, Ancient God Chungyun turned around. I'm coming. Ancient God Chungyun respectfully and excitedly said. After saying this, he transformed into a streak of light and flew into the distance. Don't let him get away. Ancient God JLC immediately called out. He was also confused. Didn't Ancient God Chungyun lose his mind and try to kill him? So fast. Ancient God Ice Jade's expression turned grave. She had somewhat underestimated Ancient God Chungyun. Stay here and tell me all your secrets. As Ancient God Ice Jade coldly said, the ice and snow around her began to spread. In an instant, a bone-chilling coldness filled the entire world and practically froze everything. However, this chill was directed at the soul level. Ancient God JLC's soul had already been heavily injured, and he immediately found it difficult to endure. In the distance, the thought body within Ancient God Chungyun's body was also assaulted by a freezing chill and couldn't help but tremble. This half-step God Lord is even stronger than Ancient God JLC. Ancient God, Chungyun whispered. At this moment, he was much calmer than before. He knew how to carefully observe and analyze. But even if Ancient God Ice Jade was stronger than Ancient God JLC, there was no way she could stop him if he wanted to escape. Time flows smoothly. Ancient God Chungyun called out, and powerful ripples of time energy immediately began to spread through his body. Then, something incredible happened. Ancient God Chungyun's body began to glow with a strange and twisted light. His entire body seemed to become transparent, and with a buzz, he transformed into a mystical ray of light. Swish! A moment later, the bizarre ray of light that Ancient God Chungyun had transformed into ignored the chill and flew away with even greater speed. This is... Ancient God JLC was dumbstruck. Even when facing Ancient God Ice Jade at her peak state, the other party was still able to escape unscathed. Just what sort of secret escape art was that for it to be so bizarre and powerful? The other 2 members of Ancient God Ice Jade's team were also stunned. This is no longer a simple time secret art. but an even more profound manipulation of time. Could this thought body have been that race when it was alive? Ancient god Ice Jade's frosty face gradually turned grave. For a moment, her mind was filled with doubts. If this person really had been that race when he was alive, she didn't even want to offend him. Fortunately, their goal this time was still Xian Wuheng and the ancient god seal. Where did Xian Wuheng run off to? Ancient god Ice Jade coldly asked. In the direction that giant god race member fled in. On the other end, Zhao Feng's group was cautiously flying through the world. After all, the mystic realm was full of dangers. They weren't in their best condition, so they had to be careful. Get as far away from this place as possible. Xian Wuheng said. If anyone else from Ancient Soul Hall was here, they would assuredly return to investigate once more. At this moment, the group suddenly sensed something strange behind them. With a sweep of their divine senses, all of them were alarmed. Ancient God Cheng-Yun. Ancient God Sundermount called out in alarm. The demonified ancient god Cheng-Yun had left an extremely deep impression on them. At this moment, ancient god Cheng-Yun was charging toward them. Had he given up on pursuing ancient god JLC and turned around to kill them? Ancient god Cheng-Yun also saw Zhao Feng's group, and a hint of anger and hatred appeared on his face. However, he had used a secret art to escape from a half-step god lord, so he was somewhat weak and unfit to continue fighting. Moreover, he had more important matters to attend to, so he had no time to deal with Zhao Feng's group. There's a huge change in his expression. Zhao Feng called out. Ancient god Cheng-Yun was even calmer at this moment, but that was only the thought body. Ancient god Cheng-Yun's soul was probably completely submerged. Bish! Ancient god Cheng-Yun flew past them and vanished into the distance. He's a little weak. Could there really be other members of Ancient Soul Hall here? Ancient God Resplendence suddenly said. Ancient God Cheng-Yun hated Ancient Soul Hall, as if there was a blood feud between them. But Ancient God Cheng-Yun did not continue to pursue Ancient God JLC. Instead, he appeared extremely weak as he fled into the distance. It appeared that other experts of Ancient Soul Hall had arrived, and Ancient God Cheng-Yun was no match for them, so he chose to flee. Wait, he seems to be in a hurry to go somewhere. Zhao Feng, who had observed the situation more carefully, immediately said, Should we follow him and take a look? Ancient God Resplendence asked. The thought body residing in Ancient God Cheng-Yun's body was definitely a living being of this dimension. The place he was in such a hurry to go to was definitely extremely important. Let's get as far away from this place as possible and find a place to heal our injuries, Zhao Feng suggested. The four of them were in extremely poor condition. If they encountered a group of Yao gods or some other danger, they would probably die here. There's a Heaven's Legacy race building up ahead. Ancient God Sundermount's eyes flashed. Earlier, when they entered a Heaven's Legacy race building, they were basically certain that this was not the Heaven's Legacy race's inheritance ground. Thus, they weren't very excited to see a Heaven's Legacy race building. It's not just this one. Zhao Feng looked into the distance and saw even more things. He realized that this wasn't the only Heaven's Legacy race building up ahead. Moreover, these Heaven's Legacy race buildings were rather unique. They were equipped with many attack-type mechanisms, like fortresses prepared for war. In addition, these buildings had all been damaged to a certain extent. Some of them were even reduced to rubble. So many Heaven's Legacy race buildings. Ancient God Resplendence said in shock. She had seen quite a few Heaven's Legacy civilizations, but this was her first time seeing buildings that were used for war. Stop! There's a group of Yao gods in that massive gray castle. Zhao Feng suddenly stopped and messaged. The group then carefully avoided them and continued onward. There was a battle here. Xian Wuheng whispered. One side of the battle is related to the Heaven's Legacy race, and it might even be the Heaven's Legacy race. Ancient God Sundermount speculated. The Heaven's Legacy race was the third-ranked mythical race of the 10,000 ancient races. There were far too many legends about them. Could the previous owner of the Ancestral Legacy Treasury have been the Heaven's Legacy race? Xian Wuheng thoughtfully said. The ancient God Seal was a special divine artifact refined by the Heaven's Legacy race, and it was the key to this dimension. There were also many Heaven's Legacy race war-type buildings in this dimension. It seemed like something major had taken place here. The other two members of the giant god race, and Zhao Feng, were even more convinced that the ancestral legacy treasury was not the giant god race's, but some mysterious place related to the Heaven's Legacy race. 5 days later, the group was still flying through this dimension. In this vast world, one could see a Heaven's Legacy race building at regular intervals. That giant silver tower? Zhao Feng's eyes suddenly focused on a metal tower of the Heaven's Legacy race. This silver tower was much taller than any of the buildings they had seen so far, and it was rather well preserved. His previous experience told Zhao Feng that any relatively large and intact building would be occupied by a group of Yao gods. But there were no signs of any Yao gods living near this silver tower. Once they got closer, Zhao Feng finally understood. As it turned out, because this building was too well preserved, all the entrances were sealed and there were no holes that could be crawled through. Ordinary Yao gods were simply incapable of entering. Let's enter this giant tower and heal our injuries before we make any other plans, Zhao Feng suggested. Meow. The little thieving cat immediately jumped out of the interspatial dimension, its eyes flashing as if it was extremely interested in this building. Right, this cat is skilled in Heaven's Legacy secret arts. It should be able to open the entrance to this giant tower. Ancient God Resplendence rejoiced. Boom! The little thieving cat rushed to the entrance of the metal tower. After searching around for a while, a metal door suddenly opened. Once the group entered, the door to the metal tower closed. Thieving cat. Zhao Feng was rather surprised. Once inside, the little thieving cat immediately ran off. Zhao Feng and the other members of the giant god race first found a place to enter seclusion. Ancient God Resplendence had fought against a rank 9 ancient god, so she had been the most severely injured, her foundation damaged. Xian Wuheng had used the power of a god lord, so he had also injured his foundation. If these injuries were not quickly healed, they would affect his future path of cultivation, making it harder and harder to heal. Zhao Feng was in a slightly better state, but his eye intent had been greatly damaged. After taking some healing medicine, he could slowly recover. Swish! Zhao Feng took out a piece of jade bamboo that glimmered with white light. The moment it appeared, a powerful time energy engulfed the area, causing everything to slow down. Moonlight Sky Bamboo contained time essence and was a treasure for cultivating time intent. It could even increase the user's ability to comprehend time intent. At this moment, Zhao Feng's time intent had already reached level 5. If he used the Moonlight Sky Bamboo, it wouldn't take long for him to reach level 6. One had to realize that Zhao Feng's 5 elements and wind lightning intents were only at the peak of rank 6. Zhao Feng swallowed the Moonlight Sky Bamboo and then entered a state of cultivation. Chapter 1375. After taking a section of Moonlight Sky Bamboo, Zhao Feng instantly felt like the world around him had become extremely slow. His soul was immersed in a wondrous world, where time was sometimes slow and sometimes fast. The essence of time is indeed extraordinary. Zhao Feng was alarmed. His soul consciousness became vague as flows of magical power, Upanishad, slowly floated in his head. At this moment, Zhao Feng's understanding of time intent reached a whole new level. In less than 20 days, Zhao Feng's time intent had reached the peak of level 5. Not long ago, his time intent had reached level 5. Only the Moonlight Sky Bamboo could have such miraculous effects for him to reach the peak of level 5 so quickly. But even after Zhao Feng's time intent reached the peak of level 5, he still had not used up all the time essence. 20 days later, the time intent energy around Zhao Feng was so faint that it was about to vanish. But suddenly, a strange time intent energy surged out of Zhao Feng's body, affecting the surrounding space and making it abnormally slow. Level 6. Zhao Feng opened his eyes. A single section of moonlight sky bamboo had raised his time intent from level 5 to level 6. It truly lived up to its reputation as a treasure amongst time intent resources. Zhao Feng's God Spiritual Eye already had formidable comprehension abilities, and the moonlight sky bamboo could also increase his comprehension of time intent. This was also why Zhao Feng's time intent had reached level 6. At level 6, time intent had begun to show signs of power. It could now link with other intents and fuse them into Chaos Origin Divine Power. With this, Zhao Feng's Chaos Origin Divine Power had reached another level. Few rank 8 ancient gods could compare to it. I've mostly recovered from the loss of eye intent. Zhao Feng inspected his body's condition. Swish! He left the space-time robe and returned to the Silver Tower. Meanwhile, the members of the giant god race were still hidden in the dimension, cultivating in seclusion. A powerful, ancient bloodline aura radiated from them. Xian Wuheng's bloodline aura was the strongest, even overshadowing the other two. Being here, Zhao Feng felt an invisible bloodline suppression. Xian Wuheng's comprehension abilities are also very strong. By borrowing the power of a god lord to fight with a half-step god lord, I'm confident that he'll be able to greatly improve himself. Zhao Feng speculated. Who? Right at this moment, the powerful aura of the primordial bloodline weakened. A layer of green spatial ripples appeared in the void, and Xian Wuheng stepped out of it. My injuries are no longer a problem. Let's take a look at the situation here. First, Xian Wuheng suggested. He had ransacked the giant god race treasury, and he had also obtained quite a few strange materials from the last Heaven's Legacy race building. It would not be difficult for him to heal his wounds. Moreover, the giant god race possessed incredible regenerative abilities. There was no need to worry about ordinary injuries. All they needed to do was stabilize their foundations. And Zhao Feng couldn't agree more. After recovering his eye intent, he did not continue to cultivate. He wanted to get a better understanding of this Silver Tower. Perhaps there was some hidden danger here, or perhaps some great fortune. The little thieving cat is on the top floor. Zhao Feng could roughly guess the little thieving cat's position through their contract. Of all the Heaven's Legacy race buildings here, this Silver Tower was probably the most complete. This meant that this Silver Tower had to have some sort of special function or use. Otherwise, the little thieving cat would not have been so interested in this Silver Tower that it would sneak up to the top floor. Similarly, because it had been abandoned for so long, this Heaven's Legacy race building did not have any mechanisms or traps. Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng went up together. They did not encounter anything special along the way. The two of them felt like this was just an ordinary metal tower. But when Zhao Feng used his left eye to see through it, he discovered that the structure of this Silver Tower was extremely complex. The two quickly arrived at the top floor. Xian Wuheng was taken aback. The scenery of the top floor was completely different from the layout of the lower floors. Around the top floor were piles of unknown mechanical instruments. Countless tiny crystal tubes were intertwined and covered the entire room. In the center of the room was a massive black disc. 9 metal platforms were placed on disc. The little thieving cat was in the center of these 9 platforms, its paws on the ground as it rubbed against each other. What is it doing? Xian Wuheng asked. On the black disc, there were countless white lines that were almost undetectable. On the other hand, the little thieving cat's paws slid back and forth across the countless lines. Zhao Feng was also extremely curious as to what the little thieving cat was doing. Just when he was about to ask, "Bzzz," the black disc suddenly flashed with a faint white light. Ancient tadpole-like characters appeared and flowed into the 9 metal platforms around the disc. The 9 metal platforms instantly lit up and shot out white rays of light that connected with each other to form a nonagon. Various colors, lines, and dots of light instantly appeared on the nonagon. This is... As Zhao Feng carefully examined this image, his face froze in shock. This is the nearby terrain. Xian Wuheng immediately said. As an ancient god, he would never forget the places he had walked through. This image made them think of the nearby terrain. Meow. The The little thieving cat finally stood up and gestured at Zhao Feng, and then it put on a very arrogant expression. Xian Wuheng immediately turned to Zhao Feng. Only Zhao Feng knew what the little thieving cat was talking about. This is a perception pagoda, Zhao Feng straightforwardly said. Upon entering this dimension, everyone's divine sense and senses were greatly suppressed. They could only use 1/10 of their original strength. This place was also filled with danger, making it so that no one dared to recklessly charge in. However, this sensory tower had been constructed by the supreme intelligence of the Heaven's legacy race, so it could sense an extremely vast area. Meow. The little thieving cat extended a paw, a smug look on its face. 5,000,000 li. Zhao Feng was alarmed. Their divine senses could only extend to 30 to 40,000 li at the moment. However, this sensory tower could provide a map of a radius of 5,000,000 li. In addition, this 5,000,000 li was only the maximum range for now. This meant that this number could be increased. Besides that, if the range was reduced, the information within a certain range could be more comprehensive and detailed. The little thieving cat once more began to fiddle around. The range of the map quickly shrank until it was only 500,000 li in radius. However, everything within this 500,000 li could be clearly seen, including the number of Yao gods. They could even make out blurry images. Celestial blood glass fruit, Xian Wuheng suddenly said. Just a moment ago, he had seen a massive red fruit tree in one of the detailed images on the map. 3 or 4 blood-colored glass fruits the size of human heads were growing on this tree. The celestial blood glass fruit gathered the blood energy of the world and could greatly increase one's state of existence. It could also be fused into certain ancient bloodlines to increase the density of the bloodline. The giant god race had vigorous blood energy and cultivated the body-tempering Tao. It just so happened that the celestial blood glass fruit had a certain effect on the giant god race bloodline. Meow. A crafty look appeared on the little thieving cat's face as it began to converse with Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng. The little thieving cat wanted to stay here and use the sensory tower to survey the surroundings. As for Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng, they would follow its orders and gather precious resources. After all, with the sensory tower, they would be able to grasp everything, greatly increasing their chances of seizing treasures. Okay, Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng agreed. Xian Wuheng bore the mission of making the giant god race rise. His primary goal in coming here was to gather as many precious resources as he could. Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng then left this place. Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat communicated through thoughts, and images could be easily transmitted. Let's go here. Zhao Feng brought Xian Wuheng to some ruins and then burrowed underground. It didn't take long before they discovered several round stones of light in the rock. These are god origin stones. When used as cultivation resources, they can be used to condense divine power. In battle, you can absorb the energy of god origin stones and instantly replenish your yuan qi and divine power. Xian Wuheng immediately said, although god origin stones couldn't compare to the moonlight sky bamboo and jade nether spirit essence stones, they were still extremely precious. Moreover, Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng didn't have to pay anything to obtain these god origin stones. The two headed to the second location. This was the place where the celestial blood glass fruit was hidden. There was a group of Yao gods here, making it a rather dangerous place. However, Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng were well aware of the distribution of the Yao gods and even had a basic grasp of their cultivation, so it was easy to come up with a plan to deal with them. I'll draw them away. You take the chance to enter and seize the celestial blood glass fruit, as well as the other precious resources. Zhao Feng's time intent had reached level 6, and when combined with his space intent, his ability to escape was even greater. Delish. Zhao Feng charged into the building, and after killing several Yao gods, he immediately fled. In order to enrage the peak rank 9 Yao gods in the building, he even used his space transference to ambush them. Human, you're seeking death. The Yao gods almost turned out in full force as they pursued Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng was well aware of this situation through the little thieving cat. He had long since prepared for this and swiftly fled into the sensory tower. The sensory tower was perfectly preserved, and its defensive capabilities were outstanding. These Yao gods were helpless against it. Xi and Wuheng used this chance to sneak into their base and obtained the celestial blood glass fruit, as well as several-time intent cultivation resources. Once the Yao gods retreated, Zhao Feng and Xi and Wuheng went to the next target. This time, the two obtained a 9-lotus jade life flower. This resource contained powerful and pure divine power, and the number of lotus leaves on the flower could increase the divine power of an ancient god. And just now, the two obtained 3 9-lotus jade life flowers, all of which had 9 lotus leaves. With the little thieving cat's help, the two began to madly plunder the resources around the sensory tower. The majority of the resources in a range of 500,000 li were taken by the pair. The farther the range, the more blurry the sensory tower was, and the greater the danger. Of course, there were some particularly powerful Yao god groups or dangerous areas that the two of them could not enter. One day, the two of them were heading toward a certain location to investigate. Suddenly, a message and an image appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. Not good. The experts of Ancient Soul Hall are approaching. Zhao Feng immediately said to Xi and Wuheng, "What's the situation?" Xi and Wuheng asked. The information that the sensory tower could sense was extremely detailed. Besides ancient god JLC, there's also a half-step god lord. Chapter 1376. Why are there so many Heaven's Legacy race buildings here? Ancient god JLC was perplexed. He had always believed that the master of the ancestral legacy treasury was the giant god race. It now appeared that this dimension had originally been the territory of the Heaven's Legacy race, but had later fallen into the hands of the giant god race. So that's how it is. No wonder this place hides the secret to becoming a divine master. Ancient god JLC finally understood. Since this dimension was originally the territory of the Heaven's Legacy race, ranked third among the 10,000 ancient races, it was understandable that there was an opportunity to become a god lord here. Where are they hiding? Ancient god Ice Jade scanned her surroundings as she rapidly advanced. Suddenly, the crystal ball in his hand flashed with a green light. On the other side, the crystal ball in ancient god JLC's hand also reacted. They are hiding nearby. Ancient god JLC sneered. Restrain your aura and approach them slowly. Then, kill them in one fell swoop. Ancient god Ice Jade messaged the others. From ancient god JLC's defeat, ancient god Ice Jade could tell that Xi and Wuheng's group had some ability. Moreover, they were in such a rush to find Xi and Wuheng's group that they didn't rest for even a moment. As a result, ancient god JLC's injuries were still not completely healed, and he could only use 70% of his strength. Just wait for your deaths, haha. Ancient god JLC mentally laughed. Ancient god Ice Jade was even stronger than he was at his peak. Although he could only use 70% of his power, when working together with ancient god Ice Jade, they were unstoppable. Moreover, with ancient god Ice Jade being so cautious, Xi and Wuheng, Zhao Feng, and the others would find it impossible to escape. On the other side, upon learning that the ancient Soul Hall group was approaching, Zhao Feng and Xi and Wuheng swiftly retreated. 2 half-step god lords. Xi and Wuheng's face darkened. After the last battle, he might not even need to work together with Zhao Feng to temporarily contend against a half-step god lord. But against 2 half-step god lords, he would be powerless. Besides that, he was also wondering how the ancient Soul Hall group had managed to get here. Fortunately, I have the sensory pagoda. Zhao Feng felt a little lucky. If not for the sensory pagoda, they would have only noticed the ancient Soul Hall group when they arrived. Should we evacuate this place directly, or? Xi and Wuheng asked for Zhao Feng's opinion. Enter the sensory tower. Zhao Feng answered directly. The ancient Soul Hall group clearly had a special tool that could sense their location. In terms of speed, they were far inferior to half-step god lords. If they retreated now, they would be caught sooner or later. In addition, entering the sensory tower was the little thieving cat's suggestion. Based on what the little thieving cat said, the sensory tower had been preserved rather well, and its defensive capabilities were outstanding. Even two half-step god lords would find it difficult to break through in a short time. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng and Exine Wuheng directly entered the sensory tower and went to the top floor. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount were also present. Lord Wuheng, Ancient Soul Hall actually sent two half-step god lords. Ancient God Sundermount appeared rather helpless. The giant god race had never expected Ancient Soul Hall to come to the ancestral legacy treasury. Otherwise, they would have sent a half-step god lord to accompany Exine Wuheng. Meow meow. The little thieving cat jumped onto a metal platform and gestured to indicate that there was no need to be too depressed. The little thieving cat said that it has already gained initial control over the sensory tower and has activated some of its defenses. Even if Ancient Soul Hall has two half-step god lords, they will still need some time to break through. Zhao Feng interpreted the little thieving cat's meaning. Really, the eyes of Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount flashed. Outside the sensory tower, the Ancient Soul Hall team slowly arrived. They actually sensed our arrival and hid in a Heaven's Legacy race building. Ancient God JLC was rather surprised. Earlier, they had been preparing to slowly approach the Ancient God Seal, but then they realized that it had suddenly moved, only stopping after reaching a certain place. This is impossible, Ancient God Iced Jade coldly said. They had made ample preparations before entering this place. For example, that crystal ball had been specially made by God Lord Stellar Aspect, a tool that could sense the existence of the Ancient God Seal. The giant God Race team had entered this place completely unprepared. So how had they sensed their arrival? They're seeking death by hiding in this tower. Charge in and kill them all. The other two members of Ancient God Ice Jade's team were already getting impatient. Go in. Ancient God Ice Jade called out. If Exine Wuheng really had sensed them ahead of time, there was definitely an ambush in the tower. But even if there was an ambush, she was not afraid. In the face of absolute strength, these little tricks were useless. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The five members of Ancient Soul Hall flew toward the entrance of the Silver Tower. But at this moment, something unexpected occurred. Suddenly, many small holes appeared around the Silver Tower, shooting out rays of silver light. These countless silver rays of light instantly formed into a complicated array. BZZE. The array activated, forming a silver barrier. This barrier was inscribed with faint Heaven's Legacy race characters and exuded an ancient and time-worn energy. The silver barrier engulfed the sensory tower while the five members of Ancient Soul Hall were kept out. A trifling array barrier. Break for me. Ancient God JLC thrust out a palm, creating a massive palm of black water that rumbled forward. BZZZE. The area where the silver barrier was struck by this attack caved in as if it was about to shatter. At this moment, the Heaven's Legacy race characters on the barrier suddenly flashed with a strange luster. A moment later, Ancient God JLC's attack began to weaken, its energy slowly draining away. What's going on? Ancient God JLC was alarmed. Everyone in the sensory tower rejoiced. Wonderful. This defensive barrier can stop the attacks of a half-step God Lord. Ancient God Sundermount called out in alarm. Not only that, Ancient God JLC's attack seems to have been converted into an energy source for the sensory tower. Zhao Feng's observation was the more detailed. Meow. The little thieving cat grinned, a very impressive expression on its face. Haha, brother cat, you truly are very impressive. Ancient God Sundermount heartily laughed. Ancient God Resplendence was also giggling at the little thieving cat's teasing. This thieving cat. Zhao Feng glanced at the image on the Enneagram and was alarmed. He remembered that before, the sensory tower could only sense everything within a radius of 5 million li. But now, the range was 8 million li. Moreover, The little thieving cat had actually said just now that its control over the sensory tower could still be improved. Everyone, we can't stay here forever. Let's use this time to increase our strength, Xi and Wuheng suddenly said. Although they were safe for now, this was not a long-term plan. Strength was everything. I feel like I'm about to break through. Me too. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount had serious expressions. Next, Zhao Feng and Xi and Wuheng took out everything they had harvested in the last few days. These are celestial blood glass fruits. Ancient God Sundermount was extremely excited. Celestial blood glass fruits were extremely useful to the giant god race. Not only could they greatly increase one's vitality, they could also be fused into one's bloodline and have a chance of increasing the density of one's bloodline. There's also 9 lotus jade life flowers, and they all have 9 lotus leaves. Ancient God Resplendence was also elated. Meow. The little thieving cat jumped over and took a large portion. Zhao Feng rolled his eyes. The majority of the resources that the thieving cat had him and Xi and Wuheng gather were useful to itself. But the little thieving cat had made a great contribution this time, so Zhao Feng didn't care, and the others had no objections. After the little thieving cat made its selection, the ones with the right to choose were undoubtedly Zhao Feng and Xi and Wuheng. Zhao Feng first chose the 9 lotus jade life flower, and then he took some soul-related cultivation resources. Finally, he chose a few time intent cultivation resources. After making his selection, Zhao Feng entered the space-time robe dimension. My strength is already close to peak rank 8. If I take this 9 lotus jade life flower, I'll definitely be able to break through, and I might even become a rank 9 ancient god. Zhao Feng's divine power was already extremely formidable, and his soul intent had reached the level of a rank 9 ancient god. All he lacked was cultivation. After taking the 9 lotus jade life flower, Zhao Feng immediately sensed 9 clear streams of energy flowing through his meridians and slowly flowing into his dantian. The first 8 streams of energy flowed into his 8 divine stages and stabilized their foundations. This process was rather slow. The 9th stream of energy circled around the 8th divine stage. As long as Zhao Feng was willing, he could begin to form his divine stages, and he had around a 40% chance of breaking into rank 9. The first 8 streams of energy are enough to help me reach peak rank 8. If I continue to reach rank 9, the chances of success are too low. I might as well seal up the 9th stream for now. Zhao Feng suddenly had an idea. Once he reached peak rank 8, familiarized himself with his strength, and consolidated it, he could consume the medicinal energy of the 9th stream of energy. His chances of breaking into rank 9 would probably be even higher. With this thought in mind, Zhao Feng took away the divine power from the 8th divine stage and used ice and water intent to seal it up. Afterward, Zhao Feng used space-time intent to wrap it up, effectively preventing the medicinal energy from leaking out. Other than Zhao Feng, the 3 members of the giant god race were also breaking through. As for the little thieving cat, it was exploring the sensory tower. Outside the sensory tower, one of the members of ancient god Ice Jade's team happened to be skilled in arrays and had a certain understanding of Heaven's legacy arrays. Thus, they waited outside to give this array master some time. In addition, they had come to this place with many fortuitous encounters. The members of Ancient Soul Hall were also in seclusion to increase their strength. This is fine as well. Once I completely recover my strength, I'll definitely make that brat, Zhao Feng, suffer a fate worse than death. Ancient God JLC used this time to heal the injuries to his soul origin. 10 days later, the array master left the vicinity of the sensory tower, a tired and dispirited look on his face. This old and useless one was unable to break that Heaven's legacy array. The rank 9 ancient god said in shame. Wasting my time. Ancient god Ice Jade coldly snorted, a bone-chilling cold that almost caused the rank 9 ancient god soul to lose consciousness. Since that's the case, I can only contact them. Ancient God Ice Jade took out a message token and sent a message to Yu Heng's team. We've found Xi and Wu Heng's whereabouts, but they're hiding in a Heaven's Legacy race building. The building is protected by a Heaven's Legacy array, so we can't break in for now. Why didn't you contact me earlier? On the other side, although Yu Heng's voice was flat, it was tinged with sinister coldness. Ancient God Ice Jade's group of 5 were taken aback. They had also guessed that Yu Heng was skilled in Heaven's Legacy secret arts, but without Yu Heng's presence, he would probably find it very difficult to break the array. At this moment, Yu Heng confidently said, "If I personally came, the Heaven's Legacy array would be nothing more than an empty shell. Although I won't be able to get here in time, breaking the array is very simple." Chapter 1377. Ancient God Destruction Flow. Yu Heng and the others slowly made their way through the gray-white mist, seemingly unable to reach the end. In this place, their senses and divine senses were suppressed to 1/20th of their original power. Moreover, the time suppression in this region was extremely powerful, making their progress extremely slow. Besides that, abnormally powerful Yao gods would occasionally charge out of the gray-white mist. Everyone was tense, not daring to be careless. This should be a newly formed forbidden zone, Yu Heng whispered. In the information he had, this place was only considered a moderately dangerous zone. With their strength, they were more than capable of traversing through it. But upon entering this place, they realized that the information they had received did not match up. At this moment, Yu Heng received a message. A hint of joy appeared on his face, but it was quickly replaced by coldness. They found the tracks of Xi and Wu Heng's group. Ancient God Destruction Flow asked in confusion. Correct. Yu Heng nodded. We probably won't be able to get there in time. Ancient God Destruction Flow was rather agitated. Ever since they entered this place, it had always been the other 2 teams that had found the tracks of Xi and Wu Heng's group. Coincidentally, every time they found the tracks of Xi and Wu Heng's group, Ancient God Destruction Flow's team was extremely far away. This time, they were even trapped in this dangerous, forbidden zone. Within the sensory tower, the little thieving cat was lying on the black stone plate, its paws lightly sliding back and forth. Zhao Feng's group was in a special dimension, cultivating. Suddenly, a white ripple appeared in space, and Zhao Feng emerged. He had already used the 9 Lotus Jade Life Flower to smoothly break through to peak rank 8. Perhaps because of the space-time robe, Zhao Feng was the first to successfully advance. How is it? Zhao Feng immediately stepped forward and looked at the image on the nonagon to observe the situation outside. Have they given up on breaking the array? Zhao Feng carefully observed Ancient God Jailsia's group. Other than Ancient God Ice Jade, the other 3 were in seclusion. But at this moment, Ancient God Ice Jade suddenly stood up. At the same time, the other members of Ancient Soul Hall also ended their seclusion. What's going on? Zhao Feng found this rather strange. The little thieving cat also glanced at the situation outside and revealed a puzzled expression. A moment later, powerful ripples of divine power began to surge in the air above Ancient God Ice Jade. A handsome and elegant young man who was nearly 1,000 feet tall was enveloped in a layer of gold and silver light. With a faint smile, he looked at the sensory tower in front of him. Spatial projection. Zhao Feng's expression darkened. The fact that the young man's projection could appear here meant that he was also in this space. This meant that there were other people from Ancient Soul Hall here. In addition, under such circumstances, this young man's projection appeared here. Could it be that he had a way to break the formation? Meow, meow. The little thieving cat's expression became abnormally solemn. Perception Tower? Tianji Secret Arts 132nd Secret Formation. Energy-absorbing sky, stabilizing formation. The moment Yu Heng's projection appeared, he immediately called out the names of the sensory tower and the array formation. The rank 9 array master in Ancient God Ice Jade's team immediately lowered his head. From these words, one could see the massive gap between him and Yu Heng. If you understood the Heaven's Legacy secret art, It wouldn't take long for you to easily break this array. Now, I can only tell you the weakness of this array. Yu Hong indifferently said. Ancient God Mu, you knows a little about heaven's legacy arrays. Ancient God Ice Jade immediately said. The rank 9 ancient god of ancient soul hall somewhat embarrassedly stepped forward. Oh, okay. I'll tell you where the core of the energy-absorbing sky stabilizing formation is. Yu Hong glanced at ancient god Mu Yu and began to explain. Ancient god Mu Yu listened attentively, and then his eyes went wide as he stared in shock at Yu Hong. This person seemed to understand this array, as if Yu Hong had been the one to lay it down. This one is stupid and can only understand 40% of it. After explaining, Ancient God Mu Yu said with an ashamed expression. Ancient God Ice Jade's team was taken aback. It doesn't matter. Break the array. Yu Hong indifferently said. Everyone, do as I say. We'll quickly break the array. Ancient God Mu Yu immediately said, his face brimming with confidence. It didn't take long before the 4 members of Ancient Soul Hall arrived around the sensory tower. Within the sensory tower, not good. Are they trying to break the array? Zhao Feng naturally understood what the Ancient Soul Hall members were trying to do. He gloomily stared at the projection. This youth had been indifferent the entire time, as if victory was already in his grasp. The other members of Ancient Soul Hall also began to break the array the moment this youth's projection appeared. This meant that this youth was confident in breaking the array. Swoosh! The 4 members of Ancient Soul Hall began to unleash powerful attacks around the essence-absorbing sky, stabilizing formation. The essence-absorbing sky, stabilizing formation buzzed, the tadpole characters on its surface rapidly flashing. But this time, the array did not absorb their attacks. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The countless tadpole characters on the essence-absorbing sky, stabilizing formation began to move in reverse. Not good. The array is about to be broken. Zhao Feng's expression turned grim. Even if he didn't understand arrays, he could tell that the members of Ancient Soul Hall understood the trick and would soon be able to break the array. Meow. The little thieving cat helplessly gestured. It told Zhao Feng that all it could do now was expend a little more energy so that the array could last a little longer. Not long after, boom, boom, boom. Massive explosions came from the vicinity of the sensory tower. The silver array slowly began to vanish. Let's go. Ancient God Ice Jade rejoiced as she led her group toward the gate of the sensory tower. Slow down. Ancient God Jailsi, you stay here. Yu Hong suddenly said. Ancient God Jailsi's face froze. Now that the array was broken, they were just about to charge in and capture Zhao Feng's group. This was his chance to make up for his mistakes. But Yu Hong had suddenly stopped him. Why? Was Yu Hong still holding a grudge over what happened before? The fact that Xin Wuheng's group was able to activate the defensive array means that they already have basic control over the sensory tower. You stayed outside to prevent the people inside from escaping through the other exits. Yu Hong added. So that's how it is. Ancient God, Jailsi breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was even more surprised at how Yu Hong understood the sensory tower so well. Broom. At this moment, the gate opened, and Ancient God Ice Jade's group smoothly entered. On the top floor of the sensory tower, the little thieving cat controlled the 9 metal platforms and switched the image to show Ancient God Ice Jade's group. The traps there? Zhao Feng was taken aback. He remembered that there shouldn't have been any traps in the sensory tower. Meow. The little thieving cat immediately explained to Zhao Feng that this was its doing. The little thieving cat's control over the sensory tower was not limited to its sensory abilities and defensive arrays, but also some of the traps in the sensory tower. An important building like the sensory tower naturally couldn't just have a defensive array, so it was bound to be heavily guarded. If that's the case, it'll take them a long time to get here. Zhao Feng breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to enter the space-time robe to increase his strength. He had only just broken into peak rank 8, so his space-time intent and soul intent still had a lot of room for improvement. It was only a matter of time before Ancient God Ice Jade's group attacked. Until then, Every bit of increase in strength would give him a better chance of fighting back. But just when Zhao Feng was about to enter the space-time robe dimension, he suddenly realized that the ancient Soul Hall trio had not triggered any of the traps, and they had even successfully disarmed them and taken a few steps forward. It must be that person. Zhao Feng glanced once more at Yu Heng outside the sensory tower. In truth, it was just as Zhao Feng had predicted. Yu Heng had long ago guessed that the sensory tower was filled with traps, so his projection did not leave. Through ancient god Mu Yu's description, he told them how to disarm the traps, so that the ancient Soul Hall trio could successfully disarm the array. Too formidable. Ancient god Mu Yu was inwardly shocked and filled with admiration for Yu Heng. Yu Heng was practically omniscient. He only needed to give a little description of the traps and arrays in this place, and Yu Heng would be able to deal with them. It didn't take long for them to pass through the first floor and reach the second floor of the sensory tower. He truly is incredible. Ancient god Ice Jade whispered. Without Yu Heng, even if they broke through the defensive array, they would have found it very difficult to reach the top of the tower. On the top floor of the sensory tower, there's no time. Zhao Feng's expression darkened. The ancient Soul Hall trio had disarmed the traps far too quickly, giving him no time to enter the space-time robe to cultivate. Buzz. Bzzz. At this moment, a heavy and powerful ancient bloodline energy appeared near Zhao Feng, causing the bloodline in Zhao Feng's body to tremble. Xian Wuheng's about to break through. Zhao Feng was a little happy. Xian Wuheng was currently the strongest person on their side. If he could make a breakthrough in his cultivation, everyone's hopes would increase by a bit. Meow. The little thieving cat immediately had Zhao Feng get onto the blackstone plate. Zhao Feng instantly felt like he could see every part of the sensory tower, and his mind could smoothly roam the entire sensory tower. Understand. Zhao Feng understood the little thieving cat's goal in doing this. On the second floor of the sensory tower, the ancient Soul Hall trio was in the middle of disarming the traps. There's a celestial poison silkworm spirit array here. Once touched, the celestial poison silkworm spirit array will activate, and anyone below the ancient god level who is injured by the array is doomed to die. If an ordinary ancient god is injured, their divine power will rapidly drain away, and their soul consciousness will turn blurry. Yu Heng's voice resounded in ancient god Mu Yu's mind. Yu Heng then explained how to disarm the array. Ancient god Mu Yu immediately stepped forward and touched a certain part of the wall, preparing to begin disarming the array. But at this moment, an eye suddenly appeared behind ancient god Mu Yu. This eye was embedded in the air, a bright silver color that flickered with tribulation lightning flames. Careful! Ancient god Ice Jade immediately called out, but it was too late. Cackrack! A tribulation lightning flame immediately exploded against ancient god Mu Yu's soul. Caught off guard by this sneak attack, ancient god Mu Yu screamed, and in a daze, he accidentally took an extra step forward. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In a flash, countless tiny red rays of light appeared in the air and began to rapidly revolve, exuding an inexplicable chill. Chapter 1378. In a flash, countless tiny red rays of light appeared in the air and began to rapidly revolve, exuding an inexplicable chill. In a moment of carelessness, ancient god Mu Yu's arm was injured by several red rays of light. Oh no! Ancient god Mu Yu regained consciousness and immediately began to retreat. He sensed a poison flowing through his body, seeping into his bones and soul. A moment later, his divine power began to rapidly drain away, and his soul became somewhat blurry. How is it? Ancient god Mu Yu, ancient god Ice Jade, and the other ancient god immediately flew over. If something happened to ancient god Mu Yu, it would be even more difficult for them to reach the top floor of the sensory tower. There's no danger to my life. Ancient god Mu Yu immediately seated himself cross-legged on the ground and began to circulate his divine power to suppress the poison. The celestial poison silkworm spirit array was only lethal to those below the ancient god level. It posed less of a threat to ancient gods, but the constant loss of divine power made it impossible for one's mind to focus. This is a god origin stone. It can rapidly recover divine power. When you need divine power, use it. Ancient god Ice Jade took out 2 sparkling white jade stones. Besides searching for the ancient god seal, they would also gather precious resources, and these god origin stones were one of their harvests. Ancient god Muyu took the god origin stones. The ancient soul race was a race that cultivated the soul Tao, so they had a rather strong resistance to poisons on the soul level. With these god origin stones, they could rapidly recover divine power at a crucial moment, so they were basically fine. Damn, that kid space transference, I can actually see through all these buildings. In this dimension, divine sense was suppressed, and these high-level Heaven's legacy race buildings all had the effect of blocking divine sense. Logically speaking, without a soul mark or divine sense that couldn't reach this place, the space transference, I should have been unable to descend. They control the sensory tower, so it's not strange for them to be able to do this. All you have to be careful and be on guard at all times. If the space transference I descends, immediately use a soul attack. Yu Heng's voice resounded in their minds. He won't get a second chance. Ancient god Ice Jade's expression chilled. As a member of the Soul Tao race, she had an extremely keen perception of soul energy and was skilled in soul attacks. Ancient god Ice Jade was confident that if Zhao Feng used the space transference eye again, he would never return. Continue advancing. Although the array has been activated, it won't be difficult. Yu Heng said again. The 3 from Ancient Soul Hall were taken aback, sensing an unfathomable aura from Yu Heng. On the top floor, Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat could see every movement of ancient god Ice Jade's group through the nonagon screen. They're breaking the formation again. Zhao Feng's face darkened. He had a portion of the sensory tower's authority, so he was able to activate the space transference eye and activate the mechanism array. However, his actions did not have much of an effect. All he did was buy a little bit of time. Although the array had been activated, Ancient Soul Hall still had the means to break it. After some time, the Ancient Soul Hall trio broke the celestial poison silkworm spirit formation and continued deeper. Before long, they arrived at the 3rd floor. The second time, they will definitely be on guard. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to succeed. Zhao Feng did not act rashly. If he attacked, his chances of success were minuscule, and he would suffer the frenzied assault of the Ancient Soul Hall trio. After reaching the ancient god level, one would be able to touch the space transference eye and injure Zhao Feng's soul. But if Zhao Feng did not stop them, the Ancient Soul Hall trio would quickly reach the 6th floor, the top floor. Just as expected, the Ancient Soul Hall trio quickly broke through the 3rd floor and entered the 4th floor. Buzz. Be easy. At this moment, a powerful bloodline energy emerged from not far from Zhao Feng. A moment later, Xi and Wu Heng appeared, his aura gradually receding. You broke through? Zhao Feng faintly smiled. Only Xi and Wu Heng could directly hold down a half-step godlord. And now that he had smoothly broken into peak rank 9, his strength had taken another step forward. What's the situation? Xi and Wu Heng asked, and then he turned to the nonagon screen, upon which he grimaced. Through the nonagon, he could see everything. The Ancient Soul Hall team was about to attack. Ancient God JLC is standing guard outside the sensory tower, and there are other Ancient Soul Hall experts in this dimension. Zhao Feng reported the situation to Xi and Wu Heng. If that's the case, we have to leave this place. Xi and Wu Heng said after thinking for a few moments. If they stayed here for too long, once the other experts of Ancient Soul Hall arrived, they would find it even harder to escape. But escaping was not that simple. After all, Ancient Soul Hall was far faster than them. This meant that the prerequisite for escaping was that Ancient God Ice Jade and Ancient God JLC couldn't catch up. Right now, Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount are at a crucial moment in their breakthroughs. Xi and Wu Heng added, if they were interrupted during their breakthroughs, they might suffer a backlash that would make it even more difficult for them to break through in the future. Moreover, if the two of them succeeded in their breakthroughs, the group would get even stronger. Let's work together to stop them for a while, Zhao Feng immediately said. Ancient God Mu Yu, your understanding of traps and mechanisms has improved significantly. Ancient God Ice Jade faintly smiled. Everyone could sense that Ancient God Mu Yu's speed at breaking traps and arrays had increased. Haha, it's all thanks to Yu Hong. Ancient God Mu Yu heartily laughed. As he dispelled the arrays, he became even more skilled. There were even times when he could see some clues without Yu Hang's reminder. Hurry and break the array. Only the last floor is left, Yu Hong coldly said. The three members of Ancient Soul Hall had already reached the 5th floor. They were about to reach the top floor. Yes, Ancient God Mu Yu was filled with admiration for Yu Hong and was willing to follow his orders. He walked at the very front and began to dispel the traps. Wait! Ancient God Ice Jade suddenly called out. A moment later, a figure appeared at the passage in front of them. Xian Wuheng, Ancient God Ice Jade sternly said. Xian Wuheng obediently hand over the Ancient God seal. Ancient God Mu Yu stared at Xian Wuheng and said, Wishful thinking. Xian Wuheng coldly barked. The wish. He raised his right hand, circulating boundless divine power, and then fired off several sharp fingers. Several white beams of light, imbued with formidable physical strength, shot forward. Then just wait for your death. Ancient God Ice Jade's face chilled, and the icy snowflakes around her began to dance in the air. The icy snowflakes froze all life and energy in their path. Boom! Bang! But as Xian Wuheng's finger energy charged forward, part of the icy snowflakes in front of it were shattered. This kid's strength has increased. Ancient God Ice Jade was taken aback. In this casual exchange of blows, Xian Wuheng had actually gained the upper hand. Although Ancient God Ice Jade was more skilled in Soul Dao attacks, her divine power was still at the level of a half-step godlord. This meant that Xian Wuheng's current strength had basically reached the level of a half-step godlord. To possess such strength right after breaking into peak rank 9, Xian Wuheng truly deserved to be called Xian Wuheng. Ancient God Ice Jade's eyes focused, and an even colder intent energy surged out of her body to shatter Xian Wuheng's finger energy. But at this moment, that dreamy silver eye appeared in the sky above the Ancient Soul Hall trio. Water Lightning Illusion World. A ball of lightning appeared in that dreamy silver eye. This lightning energy rapidly absorbed the nearby ice and water energy, forming a massive net of water lightning that engulfed the Ancient Soul Hall trio. After unleashing this attack, Zhao Feng immediately withdrew his space transference eye. That brat again. Ancient God Ice Jade's face chilled. If not for Xian Wuheng's appearance, she would have been able to immediately counterattack Zhao Feng's space transference eye. Boom! Ancient God Ice Jade waved her hand, and a savage soul beast that looked like a shark charged forward. The shark soul beast unleashed powerful ice and water intent, creating a storm of ice and snow that charged at the lightning net above. After a few moments of entanglement, the lightning net was neutralized. With your strength, you can't do anything to us. The other peak rank 8 Ancient God coldly called out. Xian Wuheng ignored his words and stood straight on the spot, motionless. No, they're interfering with our unraveling of the array. Ancient God Mu Yu immediately said, Focus on unraveling. Leave the rest to us. Ancient God Ice Jade coldly said, As long as they could reach the top floor, everything would be over. But just when Ancient God Mu Yu was prepared to step forward, Xian Wuheng circulated his bloodline power and unleashed several powerful finger bolts of energy. Thousand Frozen Ice Mountain. Ancient God Ice Jade extended her hands and unleashed a storm of ice and snow. The ice snowflakes arrived in front of Ancient God Mu Yu and instantly condensed into a mountain of ice and snow. Boom! Bang! Crash! Xian Wuheng's finger bolts instantly pierced through the mountain. Ancient God Ice Jade was taken aback. After Xian Wuheng used his bloodline power, she was actually at a disadvantage in a clash of physical attacks. Freeze! Ancient God Ice Jade called out, and the frigid icebound energy immediately strengthened, freezing Xian Wuheng's attack within it. This brat's strength! Ancient God Ice Jade's expression was gloomy. If Xian Wuheng was given enough time to mature, he would definitely become a major problem for Ancient Soul Hall. On the other side, her Soul Beast and the peak rank 8 Ancient God were focused on defending against Zhao Feng's sneak attack. Using this chance, Ancient God Mu Yu began to undo the traps. Soon, just wait for your deaths. Ancient God Mu Yu inwardly sneered. More than half of the 5th floor had been solved, and they were about to enter the 6th floor. As long as they could enter the 6th floor and temporarily hold down Zhao Feng's group, Ancient God JLC would be able to swiftly reinforce them. When the time came, the 2 half-step God Lords would be able to kill Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng's group. Xian Wuheng, your giant God race will never be able to rise again. Ancient God Ice Jade coldly laughed. Although Xian Wuheng had enormous potential, as long as she could strangle him here, the giant God race would have no hope. The traps have all stopped working. Ancient God Mu Yu blurted out in alarm. A moment later, boom, boom, 2 powerful ripples of bloodline energy came from the top floor of the sensory tower, causing the bloodlines of the 3 ancient soul race members to tremble. This energy not good. Ancient God Ice Jade grimaced. Those 2 energies just now were the bloodline energies of the giant God race, and one of them was at rank 9. Chapter 1379. This energy not good. Ancient God Ice Jade grimaced. Those 2 energies just now were the bloodline energies of the giant God race, and one of them was a rank 9 ancient God. Based on what she knew, Xian Wuheng was the only rank 9 ancient God of the giant God race that had come. But now there was one more. At this moment, Xian Wuheng charged out, brimming with the pressure of his bloodline and physical body. The traps here had already stopped operating, so Xian Wuheng was unimpeded. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, 2 figures charged down from the top floor. Lord Wuheng, we've come to help you. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount were elated. Die! Ancient God Resplendence bellowed, her 2 palms unleashing several sharp palms of wind. While choosing resources, Ancient God Resplendence had obtained the 3rd 9 Lotus Jade Life Flower, allowing her to directly break into rank 9. The Celestial Blood Glass Fruit had also transformed her bloodline, greatly boosting her strength. In addition, the 9 Lotus Jade Life Flower had 9 lotus leaves, a resource meant for rank 9 ancient gods. Ancient God Resplendence had not only succeeded in breaking through a minor level, but her foundation was also extremely stable. As for Ancient God Sundermount, he had also smoothly reached peak rank 8. In the future, he had an enormous chance of breaking into rank 9. How could this be? Ancient God Mu Yu and the other peak rank 8 were all stunned. Xian Wuheng wasn't the only one who had broken through to peak rank 9. The other 2 members of the giant god race had also broken through a minor level. You just said that we couldn't do anything to you. Now, let's see if those words are true. Xian Wuheng's expression was indifferent as 5 elements intense slowly began to circulate around him. 5 elements, law-shattering palm. Xian Wuheng suddenly raised his hand. 5 different colored light circles revolved around his 5 fingers. Each of the light circles contained different profundities. He unleashed a majestic palm of 5-colored vortex energy. This palm of light was imbued with destructive energy, and wherever it passed, the ice and snow would be obliterated. Boom! Bang! The 5-colored vortex palm slammed into the Arctic ice peak, instantly destroying more than half of it. Then, it continued to crush forward. Dream on! Ancient God Ice Jade's face chilled as she waved her palms, sending out one ice storm after another that gathered around the mountain of ice in an attempt to block Xian Wuheng's attacks. Break! Xian Wuheng bellowed, and a wave of 5 elements profundity energy flowed into the 5-colored palm vortex. Boom! In a flash, the palm of 5-colored vortex shattered the ice mountain and rumbled toward ancient god Ice Jade. Although Xian Wuheng just broke into peak rank 9, his intent has probably already far surpassed that of an ordinary half-step godlord. Ancient god Ice Jade's expression darkened. In terms of divine power attacks, he was no longer Xian Wuheng's opponent. As a member of the ancient soul race, she naturally couldn't keep clashing with Xian Wuheng's divine power. Ancient god Ice Jade fiercely waved her hand, unleashing a storm of ice and snow that blocked the 5-colored palm vortex. Suddenly, a sharp white awl rushed out of the snowstorm. Soul sealing all. This white awl was suffused with dreadful ice energy. Before it even struck Xian Wuheng, his soul already felt a stabbing pain. But at this moment, a dreamy silver eye appeared above Xian Wuheng, flashing with countless tribulation lightning symbols. Cackrack. A cluster of tribulation lightning flames bombarded the icy white awl. Damn that brat! Ancient god Ice Jade's eyes chilled in fury. If she used soul attacks to fight Xian Wuheng from a distance, she would have had a better chance of winning. But Xian Wuheng's team also had Zhao Feng, who was skilled in the Soul Dao. Back then, ancient god JLC had been defeated by Xian Wuheng and Zhao Feng working together. Ancient god JLC had also said that Zhao Feng's eye bloodline techniques were extremely bizarre and that he had to be wary of them. Thump! Xian Wuheng immediately dashed out. Ancient god Ice Jade Soul Attack was struck by Zhao Feng's Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame, and its power was greatly reduced, allowing Xian Wuheng to completely ignore it. Boom! 5 vortexes condensed in Xian Wuheng's palm as he thrust it forward. No, I can't fight him head-on. Ancient god Ice Jade's eyes turned as she immediately retreated. Xian Wuheng was a member of the giant god race. Once he got close, the consequences would be unthinkable. Wind traversing the 9 heavens. Indistinct winds surged around Xian Wuheng's body as he stepped forward, his body exuding a free and unrestrained intent energy that allowed him to rapidly traverse through space. In terms of fleeing speed, he might not be as fast as a half-step godlord, but in terms of movement techniques, no one present could compare to Xian Wuheng. On the other side, Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount were engaged in battle with the remaining 2 members of Ancient Soul Hall. Although the 2 of them had just broken through, their foundations were extremely firm and they were rather strong, so they could deal with them. Elder. Ancient God Muyu suddenly realized that Ancient God Ice Jade was retreating, avoiding Xian Wuheng, and he immediately called out in alarm. Damn, this scoundrel's movement technique is far too profound. Ancient God Ice Jade's expression darkened. The space was too narrow, and Xian Wuheng's profound movement technique made it impossible for her to put some distance between them. Moreover, there was still Zhao Feng in the shadows. If she used a soul attack, Zhao Feng would definitely stop her. Let's retreat from this place first. Ancient God Ice Jade immediately messaged the others. Okay, Ancient God Mu Yu and the other peak rank 8 nodded. This narrow space truly did limit the strength of the ancient soul race. Moreover, the sensory tower was under the control of the giant god race, so fighting in the enemy's territory was rather unsettling. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 members of Ancient Soul Hall immediately began to retreat and prepare to flee. After them, Xian Wuheng bellowed. Right now, he definitely couldn't let these 3 people escape just like that. Their team's whereabouts had already been exposed, and the other members of Ancient Soul Hall in this dimension were assuredly on their way. Thus, they were still in danger and needed to flee for their lives. But if they fled now, Ancient God Ice Jade's group would pursue them relentlessly, so there was no point. This also meant that Ancient God Ice Jade and Ancient God JLC had to be unable to catch up before they could truly escape. This was an excellent opportunity. They could not let Ancient God Ice Jade go. Haha, where do you think you're going? Ancient God Sundermount heartily laughed, feeling extremely refreshed. Previously, whenever they encountered a team from Ancient Soul Hall, they would immediately flee. But this time, it was Ancient Soul Hall that was fleeing. In terms of speed, your giant god race is far inferior to us. Ancient God Mu Yu coldly laughed. At this moment, is that so? A voice resounded in the soul dimension. Bzzz. A dreamy silver eye suddenly appeared in front of the Ancient Soul Hall trio. A dreamy mist began to spread, and then the eye transformed into a multicolored maze that exuded a powerful suction force. Careful! Ancient God Ice Jade immediately called out, but her warning was pointless. Ancient God Mu Yu and the peak rank 8 soul were immediately bound and sucked in by an irresistible energy. One could clearly see that part of their souls had already drifted away. Zhao Feng, Ancient God Ice Jade's face was cold and sinister as she clenched her teeth. Ancient God Ice Jade was a member of the Soul Dao race and a half-step godlord, so she was extremely resistant to the gaze of Zhao Feng's God Eye. At this moment, she could attack the space transference eye and stop Zhao Feng's God Eye gaze. But she had no chance to attack Zhao Feng. Giant God Finger, though-ish. Behind him, a huge finger light that seemed to look down on everything charged over with a shocking physical strength. Flower Annihilation Palm, Heavy Earth Divine Fist, Ancient God Resplendence, and Ancient God Sundermount also used powerful combat skills, targeting Ancient God Ice Jade. Damn, these people! Ancient God Ice Jade appeared rather panicked. Zhao Feng and Xian Wuhing's team worked together with exquisite coordination. It was clear that they had discussed this beforehand. Zhao Feng's God Eye Gaze was only effective against rank 9 and peak rank 8s. It was ineffective against Ancient God Ice Jade. As for Xian Wuhing's team, they attacked Ancient God Ice Jade, ignoring the other two. This way, the gaze of the god I would not be interrupted, and the 3 members of the Giant God race could work together to deal with Ancient God Ice Jade, giving them the absolute advantage. Boom! The attacks of the 3 members of the Giant God race rumbled toward Ancient God Ice Jade. Ancient God Ice Jade was already at a disadvantage in a contest of divine power with Xian Wuhing, so she had to deal with the divine power attacks of the 3 members of the Giant God race. Ancient Soul Body Change. Just when the attacks of Xian Wuhing's team were about to land, Ancient God Ice Jade activated her bloodline secret art. A moment later, her body turned pitch black and transparent as if she had become a soul. Although the attacks of ancient gods could penetrate the soul, they were still divine power attacks, so they did not deal much damage to the soul. And the ancient soul race had extremely formidable soul defenses. By using this secret art, they could block a fatal blow from an expert 1 minor level higher than them. Broom! The attacks of the 3 passed right through Ancient God Ice Jade's body. Using this chance, Ancient God Ice Jade waved her hand, sending a black shark into the air, accompanied by a storm of ice and snow. In a flash, Zhao Feng's soul consciousness and God's spiritual eye were both struck by a massive force. At the same time, his eye bloodline technique was interrupted. Run! Ancient God Ice Jade's face paled as she yelled. The secret art just now had only nullified the vast majority of the damage, but there was still a portion that had wounded her soul. After them, the 3 members of Giant God Hall immediately pursued. The sky was filled with fists of light, palm images, and finger blasts, all of them hurtling toward the Ancient Soul Hall trio. Zhao Feng would occasionally use his space transference eye to use various eye bloodline techniques and illusion techniques. Their target was Ancient God Ice Jade, but the target was too small and too chaotic, making it difficult to control. The 2 ancient gods next to Ancient God Ice Jade were caught up in the shockwaves. No! The peak rank 8 ancient god was instantly obliterated by the shockwaves. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ancient God Ice Jade and Ancient God Mu Yu fled from the sensory tower in miserable states. Ancient God Ice Jade's face was pale, and her soul had sustained significant injuries. Meanwhile, Ancient God Mu Yu's body was covered in wounds, and he was missing an arm. Ancient God Ice Jade, how is it? Ancient God JLC immediately charged over. Although his tone was one of concern, he was inwardly mocking them. When Ancient God JLC was defeated, Ancient God Ice Jade had already criticized him to the point of no return. Relax. With the two of us here, they won't dare to come out, nor will they be able to escape. Ancient God JLC faintly smiled. His team had lost to Xian Wuheng's group, so Ancient God Ice Jade's defeat was extremely normal in his view. But if the two of them worked together, the situation would be completely different. Boom! But the moment Ancient God JLC finished speaking, several powerful energies emerged from the entrance of the sensory tower. The three members of the giant god race charged out. Chapter 1380. Ancient God JLC blushed at the sudden appearance of the three members of the giant god race. He had just said that the giant god race wouldn't dare to come out, but a moment later, the giant god race attacked. Good, you actually took the initiative to come out and die. Ancient God JLC coughed and then laughed. Ancient God Ice Jade hadn't expected for a member of the giant god race to dare to charge out. Xian Wuheng stood straight where he was. He glanced at Yu Heng's projection and fell into deep thought. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount solemnly stared at the two half-step god lords of Ancient Soul Hall. If it weren't for Xian Wuheng's order, they wouldn't have dared to rush out. Sir, do you have any countermeasures? Ancient God Resplendence messaged. These were two half-step god lords working together. The only person on their side who could fight against a half-step god lord was Xian Wuheng. You don't have to worry about that. When the time comes, the two of you can work together and finish off that rank 9 ancient god as quickly as possible. Xian Wuheng's expression was calm. The two of us are dealing with a rank 9 ancient god. Then, the two giant god race experts were taken aback. Lord Wuheng would definitely personally deal with one of the remaining 2 ancient gods. But what about the other half-step god lord? Don't be careless. In the sky, Yu Heng's projection said calmly. These words made the 2 half-step god lords feel rather disdainful. They had 2 half-step god lords and 1 rank 9 ancient god. How could they not deal with the giant god race? Xian Wuheng looked at Yu Heng again, and his face darkened. On the surface, Ancient Soul Hall had the upper hand, but Yu Heng still warned them not to be careless. In addition, those 2 half-step god lords did not refute Yu Heng's words. From this, one could see that this person was no ordinary person. Since you're courting death, I'll send you to hell. Ancient God JLC savagely smiled as he flew forward, and a heavy pressure on the soul immediately engulfed the world. Go! Xian Wuheng growled. Boom! The white crystal light illuminated the horizon, and 3 giants suddenly appeared on the ground. Xian Wuheng's bloodline energy was the strongest, and it was able to dispel the pressure exuded by Ancient God JLC. Xiao! Xian Wuheng pointed out with a finger and destroyed Yu Heng's projection. Ancient God Ice Jade, work together and kill him first. Ancient God JLC immediately called out. Xian Wuheng, who was only at the 9th stage, was able to contend with him. Now that Xian Wuheng had reached the peak of rank 9, his strength could not be underestimated. Ancient God JLC had not fully recovered from his injuries, so he alone would find it very difficult to deal with Xian Wuheng. Ancient God JLC, let's fight again. Xian Wuheng bellowed and stepped out. Xiao! Ancient God Ice Jade also charged at Xian Wuheng. The Ancient God Seal in his hand was her first target. Ancient God Ice Jade, your opponent is me. A soul voice suddenly resounded in the world. Then, a dreamy silver eye appeared in the sky. Ancient God Ice Jade was struck dumb by these words, and then she turned around and laughed. A peak rank 8 ancient god was actually declaring war on a half-step god lord? Such a thing was unheard of. Even Xian Wuheng couldn't do it. Fine, I'll deal with you first. Ancient God Ice Jade's expression gradually turned cold. What? Zhao Feng wants to fight against a half-step god lord? Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount were both stunned in disbelief. In truth, ancient god Ice Jade had been ganged up on in the sensory tower and had suffered rather severe injuries. The strength she could use right now was even weaker than ancient god Jaelsia's. It was precisely for this reason that Zhao Feng dared to make such a plan. Go! Ancient god Ice Jade waved her hand, sending a black shark wreathed in a storm of ice and snow at the Eye of Heaven. Earth-shaking nova. The Eye of Heaven gathered a mass of chaotic energy and formed a huge ball of light. Bang! The two collided, and the black shark roared and unleashed immense energy to resist the damage of the earth-shaking nova. At the same time, a whirlpool of intent appeared nearby. A moment later, a crimson-black draconic flame shot out. Ancient soul race, giant god race. The black destruction serpent dragon heartily laughed, the pitch-black dragon flame expanding until it seemed to form a black sun. Destructive flames of calamity engulfed the world. As the flames weakened, a pitch-black dragon, 500 to 600 feet long, slowly emerged. This energy, what a powerful bloodline. It's even stronger than the giant god races. Everyone's attention was drawn to the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. Destruction Dragon Race. Xian Wuheng was stunned. He naturally recognized this Black Destruction Serpent Dragon as the one from the Divine Illusion Dimension. He just hadn't expected for this Black Destruction Serpent Dragon to be subdued by Zhao Feng. In addition, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon's bloodline had thickened, and its serpent dragon body was transforming into a true dragon. Destruction Dragon Race? Other than Xian Wuheng, everyone else immediately cried out in alarm. The Destruction Dragon Race was ranked 9th among the 10,000 ancient races. It was a terrifying race with destructive power. If it weren't for the fact that the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon was only a rank 8 ancient god, the members of Ancient Soul Hall would have long ago lost their will to fight. Destruction Dragon Breath. Without another word, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon spat out a ball of black and red forbidden divine flames. The Black Destruction Serpent Dragon had long ago become a rank 8 ancient god, and after entering this place, Zhao Feng had given it many resources. The Black Destruction Serpent Dragon was only a step away from the peak of rank 8. Boom! A massive ball of black and red flames appeared in the air, a scarlet-black sun that burned and destroyed all. Although it was only rank 8, its powerful bloodline made the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon's attacks abnormally powerful. Water Lightning Illusion Prison. The Eye of Heaven unleashed a binding and illusory eye bloodline technique. A dark blue barrier of water immediately engulfed ancient god Ice Jade, and the power of the Water Lightning Illusion Dao surged forward. 10,000 li of ice chill. Ancient god Ice Jade coldly snorted, and a bone-chilling cold began to spread out from the center of the fireball. A few moments later, both Zhao Feng's eye bloodline technique and the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon's Destruction Dragon Breath were easily nullified. Half-step godlords truly are extraordinary. Zhao Feng was extremely excited. A battle with a half-step godlord was truly too hair-raising. Even though ancient god Ice Jade was heavily injured and not at her peak state, she was still able to defeat Zhao Feng. The black shark obeyed ancient god Ice Jade's order and once more attacked the Eye of Heaven. You can play with my pet for a bit. Zhao Feng sneered as he used spatial shift to send the little thieving cat out. Meow. The little thieving cat immediately extended 2 paws. In a flash of silver light and runes, a silver-white cat lunged forward. The silver cat's body gradually grew larger until it was even bigger than the black shark, and it directly pounced over. That's the ancient soul race's secret bloodline art, soul-devouring strike. Ancient god Ice Jade stared in shock at the little thieving cat. But after using the soul-devouring strike, the little thieving cat vanished. Oh no! Ancient god Ice Jade suddenly sensed something. Swish! The little thieving cat suddenly appeared near her. The little thieving cat extended its paws, its left paw unleashing a strange white halo while its right paw unleashed a gray ball of ice. The moment ancient god Ice Jade was engulfed by the white halo, she immediately felt like all her strength was being suppressed, though the suppression wasn't very strong. At the same time, the gray ball of ice entered ancient god Ice Jade's body. She hadn't sensed any coldness from the gray ball of ice before, but when it touched her, an extremely cold ice energy suddenly began to exude from her body. Even ancient god Ice Jade, who cultivated ice intent, couldn't help but shiver. This is the power of the God-sealing race, an ice-deep race of the 10,000 ancient races. Ancient god Ice Jade called out in alarm. Just what sort of divine being was this little thieving cat? Meow. The little thieving cat made a face and then fled. Damn cat, where are you going? Ancient god Ice Jade's face was cold and sinister as she waved her hand, unleashing a mountain of ice. Although she was heavily injured and suppressed by the little thieving cat's secret art, ancient god Ice Jade's attacks were still extremely powerful. God Eye Disintegration. The Eye of Heaven focused on ancient god Ice Jade's soul-condensing attack and began to exude a dreamy luster. Whoosh! The power of the mountain of ice suddenly began to weaken, and it was getting more and more obvious. How could this be? Ancient god Ice Jade was alarmed. Today, these people had given her far too many surprises. With its power weakened, the little thieving cat was able to smoothly escape and return to the top floor of the sensory tower. At this moment, God Eye Duplication, the Eye of Heaven suddenly unleashed a dreamy mist. A mountain of ice flew out of the mist and howled toward ancient god Ice Jade. Zhao Feng had made some progress in his cultivation, and ancient god Ice Jade's technique was far inferior to ancient god JLC's soul-annihilating roar, so duplicating it was much easier. This is the technique that ancient god JLC talked about. Ancient god Ice Jade's eyes widened in shock. At this moment, the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon activated its Destruction Origin energy, unleashing a crimson-black dragon image that seethed with flames and swept toward ancient god Ice Jade. Kaboom! Their attacks engulfed ancient god Ice Jade's body. At the same time, ancient god Resplendence and ancient god Sundermount worked together to force ancient god Muyu into fleeing. The two of them immediately went to help Xi and Wuang. In a flash, ancient god JLC was in danger. He was just preparing to ask ancient god Ice Jade for help when he realized that ancient god Ice Jade was temporarily being held down by Zhao Feng. This was simply inconceivable. A half-step god lord was actually being held down by a peak rank 8. Although Zhao Feng had many tricks up his sleeves and had the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon and the Little Thieving Cat as helpers, this shouldn't have been the case. Ancient God JLC, you're still going to lose this time. Xi and Wuheng suddenly exerted strength, his every movement summoning boundless energy of the world. He and the other two members of the giant god race worked together, their fists and palms engulfing ancient God JLC. How could this be? Ancient God JLC's face was somewhat pale. Two half-step god lords working together were actually no match for Xi and Wuheng and Zhao Feng's group. Of course, the primary reason for this was that Zhao Feng had managed to hold down ancient god Ice Jade. No one had expected this. On the top floor of the sensory tower, the little thieving cat returned and once more took control of the sensory tower. The little thieving cat's authority over the sensory tower was now at its highest level. The sensory tower's perception range was 10 million li. Suddenly, 3 white dots of light appeared at the edge of the sensory tower. BZZ. The nonagon flashed with white light, and the image around those 3 dots of light began to expand. 2 members of Ancient Soul Hall and a handsome and scholarly youth were rapidly flying toward the sensory tower. Chapter 1381. At this moment, the 2 half-step god lords in the middle of battle had extremely nasty expressions. They had not expected for all the members of the giant god race to have made such a massive leap in strength. There were also other reasons, such as the sensory tower and ancient god Ice Jade's injuries. At this moment, the two half-step god lords working together were being temporarily suppressed by the giant god race. If this continued, it would be the ancient Soul Hall members who would be defeated. Suddenly, the two half-step god lords received a message. "We're coming." The messenger was none other than Yuhang. Although Yuhang was only a rank 9 ancient god, he had left an unfathomable impression in the minds of the members of Ancient Soul Hall. Given Yuhang's age, cultivation, talent, and methods, becoming a god lord in the future was nothing difficult. For this reason, all the members of Ancient Soul Hall treated Yuhang with extreme caution. Ancient god Ice Jade and Ancient god JLC remained unperturbed upon learning of this. Yuhang's team could be said to be the strongest of the 3 teams. Now that Yuhang and Ancient God Destruction Flow had arrived, even if Xian Wuheng borrowed the power of a god lord, he would be powerless to reverse the situation. What the two of them did not know was that Zhao Feng and the members of the giant god race already knew what was going on. They even knew how far Yuhang was. "Immediately run, or else we'll all be caught in one fell swoop," Zhao Feng messaged. However, it was not that easy to escape successfully. Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng began to discuss countermeasures. "Okay, let me force them back for now," Xian Wuheng said resolutely. Boom! He activated his bloodline, and his 10,000-foot body began to exude a crystalline white light, making him seem like a supreme god. Vast amounts of worldly energy gathered around his body, exuding an aura of supremacy. Not good. Xian Wuheng's activating his bloodline at full power. He must be using some forbidden secret art. Ancient god JLC immediately became wary. Relax. No matter what he's doing, once Yuhang and Ancient God Destruction Flow arrive, everything will be over. Although Ancient God Ice Jade said this, she still warily retreated some distance. "Giant God Heaven Fall Palm," Xian Wuheng bellowed. The boundless energy he had accumulated gathered above his head. Gradually, an incomparably huge hand appeared in the sky. It covered the sky and the sun, making the entire land even darker. So powerful, Ancient God JLC immediately felt a heavy pressure. If he was hit by that palm, he would definitely be heavily injured again, and his foundation would be greatly damaged. Rumble. The enormous white crystal hand descended from the sky. At that moment, a storm raged in all directions, and a terrifying pressure descended on the area directly below the palm. The moment this palm was unleashed, the giant god race and the black destruction serpent dragon retreated. Retreat for now. They will definitely die anyway. Ancient god Ice Jade immediately messaged. Then, the two of them retreated a certain distance. Right at this moment, the enormous white crystal palm came crashing down. Rumble. The ground instantly shattered, and a terrifying and profound power spread out in all directions. At the same time, a square gap suddenly appeared on the top floor of the sensory tower. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat immediately leapt out. He and the giant god race members fled the area. Not good, they ran away. Ancient god Ice Jade called out in alarm. How could this be? Ancient god JLC was stunned. Logically speaking, the giant god race should have held the advantage, but they had suddenly retreated. Quick, chase them. Ancient god Ice Jade immediately called out. As half-step god lords, the two of them were far faster than members of the ancient soul race. At this moment, Ancient God Destruction Flow and Yuhang arrived. He actually ran away. Ancient God Destruction Flow's face was frosty as he prepared to pursue. But suddenly, Yuhang's expression froze, and he shouted, "Don't chase, retreat." Yuhang's expression was rather excited. This was the first time the members of Ancient Soul Hall had seen Yuhang show such an expression. This ancient god JLC didn't know what to do. Although Xian Wuheng and the others had escaped, he would definitely be able to catch up. This was a great opportunity for him to make amends, but at this time, Yuheng actually told them to stop chasing. Although they did not know why, they suddenly felt a sense of danger. At the same time, they did not want to disobey Yu Heng's orders. Xiao, Xiao, Ancient God Ice Jade and Ancient God JLC immediately flew toward Yu Heng's location. The moment they began to retreat, they sensed an extremely powerful ripple of energy coming from the sensory tower. Oh no! The two grimaced, their sense of danger intensifying, and they immediately sped up. Rumble! The sensory tower shattered, engulfed in endless destructive divine light. Even a rank 9 ancient god would be obliterated by this forbidden energy. A massive hole appeared where the sensory tower once stood. Wah! Ancient God Ice Jade had fled rather late, so she was struck by some of the shock waves and vomited blood in the air. So it was because of this. Ancient God JLC's heart palpitated in fear. If not for Yu Heng's timely warning, the two of them would already be dead. At this moment, Ancient God Mu Yu returned, a look of shame on his face. He had been forced to flee by the giant god race duo. As expected of the Heaven's Legacy cat, Yu Heng softly said, "The majority of the buildings of the Heaven's Legacy race, especially the more important ones, had self-destruct sequences. This was to prevent secret information from falling into the hands of enemies." Yu Heng's group of 3 went to Ancient God Ice Jade and Ancient God JLC aside and then shouted, "Let's go." But where are they? Ancient God JLC hesitated. Xian Wu Heng's obstruction and the self-destruction of the sensory tower had allowed Zhao Feng's group to escape the range of the crystal ball's perception. "Since I've already seen them, I can roughly guess where they are," Yu Heng calmly said. As soon as he said that, the rest of the people were relieved. Moreover, the 3 teams had gathered together. 3 half-step god lords, 2 rank 9 ancient gods, Ancient God Mu Yu and Yu Heng, and 1 peak rank 8. If they found Xian Wu Heng's group again, would they still be able to escape? Even Ancient God JLC, who had failed twice in a row, would firmly say that it was impossible. "Ancient God JLC, you've lost again." Ancient God Destruction Flow couldn't help but jeer. Ancient God JLC could only ignore this situation. Whoosh! The Ancient Soul Hall team, led by Yu Heng, began to move out. "Tell me the details of the battle," Yu Heng calmly said. Just now, his projection had been destroyed, so he had no idea about the battle at all. "It's like this." Ancient God JLC began to explain. After leaving the sensory tower, Zhao Feng's group began to flee. "Brother Cat, you truly are formidable." Ancient God Sundermount heartily laughed. "But I don't know if the members of Ancient Soul Hall were killed in the explosion." Ancient God Resplendent smiled and said, "They also found it difficult to determine this point. Even if 1 or 2 of them are killed, they still won't let us go. Our first priority is to get as far away from this place as possible," Zhao Feng suggested. Ancient Soul Hall had tools that could sense their location, making it easier to search for them. After flying for 3 days, the group finally began to slow down. On a certain day, they went underground to rest. Everyone began to heal their wounds and recover their energy as they chatted. "What should we do now?" Ancient God Sundermount asked. "Let's find Ancient God Qingyun and see where he is. If possible, take him away. Perhaps there's a way to expel the thought body in his body," Xian Wu Heng said after some thought. After all, Ancient God Qingyun was a member of the giant god race, and his strength could not be underestimated. If they brought him back, a god lord expert might be able to restore Ancient God Qingyun. This idea was immediately approved by the others. Xian Wu Heng took out a message token and sent a message, giving him a rough sense of the direction. This way, the group slightly changed directions and continued onward. After a while, the number of Heaven's Legacy race buildings has decreased, Ancient God Resplendence suddenly said. The others noticed this as well. The time intense suppression has gotten stronger, Zhao Feng immediately said. The strengthening of the time intense suppression was a gradual process, so normal people would find it very difficult to sense. Zhao Feng had the highest time intent of everyone present at level 6, so he knew. It really is like this. Ancient God Sundermount was taken aback. Compared to the sensory tower's previous location, The time suppression here was indeed stronger. After traveling for a while, they saw very few Heaven's Legacy race buildings, at most a few ruins. Suddenly, an illusory ball of white light appeared in the ruins, exuding strange ripples of energy. What's that? The group couldn't help but get closer. The closer they got, the stronger the time intent suppression became. Once they got very close to that object of white light, they could finally see what it was. This was a massive gray-white stone slab. Written on it were characters that they didn't recognize. These characters glimmered with a faint white light and exuded invisible ripples of time intent. It's just a single character, but it contains such powerful time intent. Ancient God Resplendence was taken aback. Moreover, based on the other parts of this stone slab, one could determine that this was not a building of the Heaven's Legacy race. Xian Wuheng put the gray stone slab away in his interspatial dimension, and the group continued onward. After traveling for a while, the ground suddenly became barren, and the time intent suppression continued to strengthen. What's going on? There was so much life up ahead, but now it's barren? Ancient God Sundermount asked in surprise. Swish! Swish! At this moment, a soft and hurried sound came from the distance. Everyone's expression turned serious as they became vigilant. A little while later, a vast black fog flew over, and that confounding sound became even clearer. No, that's not a black fog. Zhao Feng was startled. It wasn't a black mass at all. Instead, it was countless black insects that looked the same. Each insect was only the size of an infant's fist, and they were densely packed together, numbering in the hundreds of millions. Wherever they went, all the heaven-earth yuan, qi, and vitality would be obliterated. What? Insects? The members of the giant god race were taken aback. As the black fog got closer, everyone could finally make out what it was. So many. Zhao Feng was stunned once more. The countless insects were like a sea of insects. Almost all of them had reached the true god level. True gods were like ants in the eyes of ancient gods. But when the number of ants reached a certain level, they could even topple an elephant. Could it be the 10th ranked race of the 10,000 ancient races? Ancient God Sundermount's face went slack. The locust moth race. Xian Wuheng's expression changed drastically. Chapter 1382. The Locust Moth Race. Xian Wuheng's expression changed drastically. The Locust Moth race was the 10th ranked forbidden race of the 10,000 ancient races, the progenitor of all the insect races of the fan universe. It was known as the ancestor of all insects. In terms of individual fighting power, the Locust Moth race was far inferior to the 9th ranked Destruction Dragon race. But in terms of threat and terror, it definitely surpassed the Destruction Dragon race. There was only one true member of the Locust Moth race in this army of insects, the Locust Moth Queen. As the ancestor of all insects, it had given birth to countless insects and descendants. These descendants possessed extremely diluted bloodlines. Although they were not true members of the Locust Moth race, they possessed various abilities. Some of their descendants could devour metal and easily topple a building complex. Others could swallow fire and ice. Some were indestructible. Some were so tiny that it was difficult to see with the naked eye, and some could devour souls. These descendants were called Locust Moth race, and they formed a terrifying insect army. There was definitely one member of the Locust Moth race in this sea of insects, the legendary Locust Moth Queen. Swish! Swish! The countless Locust Moth Queen formed a dreadful wave of insects that surged toward the giant god race team. These small insects were pitch black, and their carapaces were covered in strange patterns. Their mouths were round and covered in countless sharp teeth, making for an extremely disgusting and terrifying sight. Let's go. The Locust Moth race has an extreme hatred for all other races. Ancient God Resplendence immediately said, there was a rumor in the Chixing Zone that a god lord had inadvertently offended the Locust Moth race while exploring ruins. Following that, the sea of insects chased after that divine master for 1,000 years before finally devouring him. Upon hearing this, everyone prepared to retreat. As expected, when the sea of insects looked at the crowd, they emitted an enormous killing intent. Buzz. Bzzz. At this moment, a soul ripple came from the center of the sea of insects. The sea of insects then split in two, with one group continuing forward while the other group charged at the giant god race team. Not good. We've been targeted. Ancient god Sundermount was alarmed. Swish. Swish. The dense and terrifying sea of insects seethed with killing intent as they charged at the giant god race group. Destruction flower palm. Ancient god resplendence fiercely thrust out a palm. Boom. A swift wind palm quickly cut into the sea of insects, but quickly dissipated. The cultivation of a single insect is not high, but when they join forces, they have the power to turn something rotten into something magical. Zhao Feng's left, I carefully observed the scene just now. The majority of these insects were rank 1 to rank 4 true gods, but they were able to block the attacks of rank 9 ancient gods, who were several levels higher than them. This was because these insects had strong defenses and were small in size, so they suffered less damage. Ancient god Resplendent's palm had been withstood by millions of insects, so they were able to block it. Even if there were casualties, they were minuscule compared to the sea of insects. The top 10 primeval geniuses are indeed not simple. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. Meow meow. At this time, the little thieving cat jumped out of the interspatial dimension and meowed at the sea of insects. At the same time, its aura changed, and the mixed aura became single. If one carefully sensed it, they would discover that the bloodline aura the little thieving cat was giving off was extremely similar to the aura of the insect sea. Chi-chi, chi-chi. In a flash, the insect sea attacking the giant god race group froze, confused expressions on their faces. On the other side, the sea of insects that was rushing into the distance also stopped. Not long after, a slightly larger insect with purplish-golden patterns on its back appeared among the swarm of insects. The moment the violet-gold insect appeared, even the powerful members of the giant god race felt their bloodlines tremble as they sensed an ancient and boundless pressure. It was as if the tiny queen worm was 100,000 mountains from the ancient times. Zhao Feng also sensed a ripple in his god's spiritual eye's origin, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Insect Mother! The giant god race members were alarmed. Only this violet gold insect could be considered a member of the locust race. All the other insects here were its descendants and slaves. Meow. The little thieving cat began to communicate with the insect mother. The little thieving cat was explaining that they were not enemies and had no ill intentions. It was also asking why the insect mother was in such a hurry to get away. When the insect sea discovered Zhao Feng's group, it should have attacked as a whole, but it had split into two groups, with the insect mother leading the other group in another direction. There had to be some other reason for this. Swish! The insect mother gave off a low and grating sound. The insect sea that had been pursuing Zhao Feng's group immediately retreated. The dreadful insect sea then flew off into the distance. This, Brother Cat, what did you do just now that the insect sea didn't attack us? Ancient god Sundermount had a look of shock and reverence for the little thieving cat. Meow. The little thieving cat gestured to the group, indicating that the insect sea was heading toward a treasure ground in this dimension. As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. With the strength of this insect sea, even two half-step godlords would be forced to flee. How could a treasure ground that could tempt the sea of insects to be so tempted be ordinary? However, these insects were clearly hostile to them. If they followed, they might end up provoking them. In addition, if they followed, wouldn't they be competing with the insect sea for treasure? Fighting against such a terrifying insect sea was simply too irrational. Moreover, they would be endlessly pursued afterward. Meow. The little thieving cat gestured to the group. It meant that the insect mother didn't have a very high cultivation, around peak rank 9. With Xian Wuheng's cultivation and the vision of Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye, even if they followed, they wouldn't be noticed. When the time came, they could act according to the situation. After saying this, The little thieving cat sent a message to Zhao Feng. The general meaning was that if Zhao Feng didn't go, he would regret it. Then let's go take a look. If it's too dangerous, we'll retreat, Zhao Feng suggested. After a period of discussion, the members of the giant god race also agreed. All of them wanted to see just what kind of place the Stemborer army was treating with such importance, such a precious treasure. Whoosh! Just like this, the group followed the traces left behind by the insect sea. A few moments later, they saw the insect sea, but all of them maintained a certain distance from the insect sea, so they weren't discovered. The suppression of time intent has suddenly become extremely strong, Ancient God Sundermount said. The other members of the group also noticed this and nodded. This sudden change in environment indicated that there truly was a secret up ahead. Not long after, they've stopped, Zhao Feng suddenly said. Even with Zhao Feng's current vision, he could only see the insect sea. As for what lay ahead of the insect sea, he had no idea. Let's go somewhere else. This way we can get close to the treasure ground without being noticed by the insect sea, Zhao Feng suggested to the group. Following that, the group of people began to fly to the left and slowly approached. It didn't take long before a massive and damaged building appeared before them. This was a gray castle covered in profound carvings. The ancient castle exuded a vicissitude of time, and it exuded time intent energy. This isn't a building of the Heavens Legacy race. Everyone was taken aback. Almost all the buildings they had seen before had been built by the Heavens Legacy race, so they were extremely surprised to see another style of building for the first time. Now that they thought about it, they had seen many ruins on the way, but none of them had been built by the Heavens Legacy race. They were rather similar to this gray castle. Although this castle isn't built by the Heavens Legacy race, it's still very unusual. It seems to be built in the style of another powerful race, Xian Wuheng sternly said. In the ancient era, many abnormally powerful races had their own culture and architectural styles. As they got a few more steps closer, they realized that the gray castle was covered in countless resources, the majority of which were time-intent cultivation resources. As for the precious materials on the ancient gray castle, they were even more precious and aged. They even discovered 3 stalks of moonlight sky bamboo. Besides that, there were also several other treasures on the same level as the moonlight sky bamboo. So many treasures of heaven and earth, ancient god resplendence, and ancient god Sundermount's eyes shone. The resources here, added together, were even more valuable than all the resources they had taken before. There's no way such a treasure ground hasn't been occupied, Zhao Feng sternly said. In this dimension, any place rich in yuan qi or covered in resources would have been occupied by a race or abnormally powerful Yao god. As for the owner of that strange ancient castle, he was definitely in existence that even the insect sea was extremely fearful of. When he thought of this, Zhao Feng became extremely curious as to what was inside this ancient castle. The others were also extremely curious. Swish! Swish! The insect sea in front of the ancient castle suddenly let out countless shrill noises, and then they swarmed toward the ancient castle. Bzzz! At this moment, a layer of white light rippled out from the ancient castle and engulfed the entire world. In a flash, even the wind and grass in the world slowed down. The insect sea's assault also slowed. On the other side, Zhao Feng's group sensed a powerful time-intent energy. Just who is it that is emitting this power of time? Ancient God Resplendence whispered. They were still unable to determine the level of this time-ultimacy energy. Close to level 9, Zhao Feng whispered. Time intent was one of the most difficult intents to cultivate. But the time intent exuded at this moment had reached level 9. At this moment, several white beams of light shot out of the ancient castle. Dooish! A streak of light shot out. Everyone present, including the countless insects, stared at the ball of light that was surrounded by the mysterious light. Zhao Feng immediately used his god's spiritual eye to peer through it and see what was inside the ball of light. That's a fragment. Zhao Feng's expression froze. He had thought that it was a powerful race or some strange ancient Yao god, but he had never imagined that it was a fragment of a mirror. But just one fragment was enough to make the entire insect sea stand on guard. Just what was the origin of this fragment? Haha, you've come again, but this time you will return empty-handed. An elderly space-time voice came from the fragment. Swish, swish. The insect sea screeched. In a flash, all the insects received the order from the insect mother and began to take up their formation. It didn't take long for them to form a massive, circular object that looked like an insect nest. Buzz. Bzzz. All the insects worked together to resist the time energy exuded by the fragment. The insect nest suddenly began to roll forward twice as fast as before, and it was about to reach the ancient castle. Chapter 1383. In front of the Grey Fortress, the Stemborer army, numbering in the hundreds of millions, had gathered into a massive pitch-black ball that looked like an insect nest. Kaboom! This pitch-black ball was extremely dense and unimaginably heavy, and it exuded a heaven-shaking energy that began to batter at the time energy produced by the mysterious fragment. Despite the obstruction of the vast time energy, the insect ball was able to forcefully press forward. On the other end of the ruined fortress, Zhao Feng and Exine Wuheng used their own techniques to witness this sight, and their minds couldn't help but be stunned. Any single insect in this insect army was like an ant in front of an ancient god that could be destroyed with the flick of a finger. Yet this strange array of hundreds of millions of stemborers was able to unleash such dreadful power. This power had probably already surpassed that of an ordinary half-step godlord. It's actually able to push forward against level 9 intent time energy. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh in amazement. If it were him or Exine Wuheng, they would probably be unable to resist the time energy produced by the fragment. What's the situation? Ancient God Sundermount and ancient God Rosy Cloud were somewhat unable to restrain themselves. There were enormous amounts of natural resources in front of this ruined fortress, with the majority being time resources. If all these resources were taken out, they would be able to raise many elite giant god race experts. But the two of them were limited by their cultivation levels and did not dare to recklessly use their divine senses for fear that the Stemborer Queen would notice. Even Exine Wuheng, who had reached peak rank 9 and was a god lord his last life with a powerful soul intent, had to be very careful when observing. What does Brother Zhao think? Exine Wuheng asked for Zhao Feng's opinion. The two of them were able to observe the battle between the mysterious fragment and the Stemborer army. But Exine Wuheng had a feeling that Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye was even clearer than his own. Ancient god Rosy Cloud and ancient god Sundermount also turned to Zhao Feng. Ever since entering the ancestral legacy treasury, Zhao Feng's dazzling performance had won their trust. I'm sure that if we make any strange movements, we'll alert the mysterious fragment, Zhao Feng slowly said. His left, I had been observing the mysterious fragment emitting the formidable force of time. Ever since his god spiritual eye reached the quasi-god eye level, he rarely encountered anything he couldn't see through, and this fragment was the hardest to understand. Why do you have such a judgment? Exine Wuheng was shocked. He did not want to provoke the power of the mysterious fragment. The power of time was a rule power that was extremely difficult to break. Based on the current understanding, there was basically no effective way to restrain the power of time. On the contrary, all the powers in the world were suppressed by the power of time. This fragment is the crux of the entire castle. All of the time force in the castle region is under its control. Zhao Feng said calmly. The three members of the giant god race felt stifled. Simply put, as long as they made any strange movements, they would be attacked by the power of time. However, in the surroundings of the dilapidated castle, there was a huge amount of precious materials. Treasures like the moonlight sky bamboo could be seen from time to time. It wasn't an exaggeration. If he could plunder the precious materials in a single area of the castle, His gains would be 10 times better than before. What should we do? If we don't hurry, the people from Ancient Soul Hall will get here soon. Ancient God Kaiyun and Ancient God Sundermount were extremely unwilling. As he gazed at Zhao Feng's calm and elegant face, Exine Wuheng suddenly smiled. Brother Zhao, you probably have a plan. The two had known each other for a very long time, so he had a deep understanding of Zhao Feng. If there really wasn't any chance, Zhao Feng would have retreated long ago instead of wasting time here. We can only wait. After spitting out these 3 words, Zhao Feng fell silent. He said to himself, whether I can succeed or not will depend on whether the 10th-ranked Locust Moth race lives up to its name. Swish, swish, swish. In front of the castle, the ball of insects began to slowly swell, further pressuring the mysterious fragment. Judging from the situation, the sea of insects seemed to have the upper hand. Hell, little insects, you've gotten stronger, but it's useless. The ancient space-time voice came from the fragment in the ball of light. Before the voice could finish speaking, pop, an even more intense time, energy surged in the huge castle. Soon after, a dazzling white light soared into the sky around the fragment. A moment later, a ring-shaped time shockwave engulfed everything for several hundred li wherever this time shockwave passed. All things fell silent. All things in the world seemed to freeze. What? On the other end, Zhao Feng and the 3 ancient god race members felt the ripples of a law that could not be defied. A few ripples of energy came from the battle up ahead. In a flash, the bodies, bloodlines, and even thoughts of the 4 present froze. The wind froze, and even their breathing and hearts seemed to stop. Time stopped. At this moment, this was the only thought in Zhao Feng's mind. Time law. Just where did this fragment come from? Exine Wuheng was stunned. In his last life, he had reached the God Lord level and comprehended a law, so he naturally knew how terrifying a law was. And amongst all the laws, the time law was revered. But now, this tiny fragment was able to activate the forbidden energy of the time law. Time stopped. Even time had stopped. No matter how powerful you were, what could you do? Crack. Countless cracks immediately appeared on the surface of the compressed insect sea sphere. In a flash, countless insect shells fell to the ground, forming a wretched sea of insect corpses. There were at least several dozen million of them. Exine Wuheng and Zhao Feng both felt their hearts tremble at this sight. At this moment, they deeply understood just how merciless and tyrannical time energy was. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Tens of millions of insect corpses were falling to the ground at every moment, forming a thicker and thicker sea of insect corpses. Creak! A sharp cry came from the center of the insect sea, cold and hateful. That's the Stemborer Queen, Exine Wuheng called out. Zhao Feng chuckled. The Stemborer Queen is about to counterattack. In a flash, the surface of the insect sea sphere formed by the Stemborer Queen army began to exude layers of black mist. This black mist was extremely astonishing, and as the time energy swept through it, it began to expand at a terrifying rate. 100 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, 100,000 feet. In less than 10 breaths, a sky pillar nest appeared in the black mist. The sky-propping nest appeared in the dissipating black mist, emitting an ancient and wild aura. Zhao Feng and the other members of the giant god race felt their minds tremble, and they felt a strange urge to prostrate themselves. It was as if the sky pillar nest was the origin of everything. Zhao Feng discovered that the god's spiritual eyes' origin energy rippled under this aura. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A black gust of wind surged out of the sky pillar nest, sweeping the 100 million insect corpses into the sky pillar nest. The interior of the sky pillar nest began to wriggle. Recycling. Zhao Feng had a strange expression. Exine Wuheng couldn't help but sigh. As expected of the 10th-ranked mythical race, they can even resist the power of the time law a little. At this moment, the ball of light around the fragment dimmed a little. Just now, it had used up a lot of energy to use the forbidden power of time stop for around 10 breaths. Zhao Feng's god spiritual, I could sense that the time law protecting the ruined castle seemed to be slightly dimmer than before. Your plan is? Xi and Wuheng suddenly understood a little. Zhao Feng probably wanted to use the Stemborer army to exhaust the fragment and the castle's time law. That time stop just now had used up a lot of the fragment's time law. Right at this moment, tens of thousands of holes appeared on the surface of the sky pillar nest, and one could faintly see the sticky liquid inside. Sizzle, sizzle. Silver-white transparent insects jumped out of the holes and spread their transparent wings, their surfaces glowing faintly. Zhao Feng was slightly surprised. He could faintly sense a faint ripple of time from these insects. Whoosh, whoosh. Millions of glowing insects gathered into a sea of light and charged at the dilapidated ancient city. This time, the Stemborer Queen's target didn't seem to be the castle anymore. This wasn't the end. Countless copper beetles fell from the holes of the sky-high nest. These insects had sharp limbs. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These copper beetles quickly burrowed into the ground and split into more than 10 groups, attacking the castle from underground. The Stemborer Queen has changed its strategy. Zhao Feng and Xi and Wuheng looked at each other. The Stemborer Queen seemed to know how troublesome the mysterious fragment was, so it turned to attack the castle. The castle was bigger, so it could withstand more attacks. What a cunning insect! Your Stemborer Queen nest has evolved a new species of insect that has a certain resistance to the power of time. The mysterious fragment within the ball of light finally changed color. In the sky, the insects gave off faint time undulations and turned into a sea of light that attacked the castle. The other group of copper beetles had strong defense and were adept at burrowing into the ground. Their target was the dilapidated ancient castle. The mysterious fragment had to maintain the castle's defenses, so it expended a lot of energy. In the next period of time, a long war of attrition ensued. Insects were turning into carcasses on the ground and underground. But new insects would soon be born from the sky pillar nest, providing an endless stream of reinforcements. They bit each other, neither willing to admit defeat. 2 days later, it's about time to strike. Zhao Feng and Xan Wuheng glanced at each other and nodded. At this moment, the mysterious fragment's power was mostly occupied by the Stemborer army, and it had expended a lot of energy. This was the perfect time to take advantage of the chaos. At the same time, several powerful auras appeared in a certain part of the castle. Swish, swish, swish. Several figures stood still and stared at the distant castle and the sky pillar nest, which was even larger than the castle itself. That magnificent and epic battle scene caused their hearts to tremble. That lair is... Ancient god destruction flow was stunned. The Stemborer Queen nest. Only Yu Heng had an indifferent expression as he leisurely said, "From the scale, the Stemborer Queen has at least reached peak rank 9. The 3 half-step god lords and Yu Heng used their divine senses to take a closer look. The fragment within the mysterious ball of light was reflected in their senses. What's that? Ancient god Ice Jade and Ancient god Black Prison were rather interested. An ancestral artifact fragment. For the first time, the composed Yu Heng grimaced, excitement and fervor appearing in his eyes. An ancestral artifact fragment. The 3 half-step god lords were all stunned. They had apparently heard of this legend before. Starting from now, our primary target is the ancestral artifact fragment. Yu Heng firmly said, "That ancient god seal." Ancient god Black Prison weakly asked, "If we can obtain the ancestral artifact fragment with time energy, we can put the ancient god seal aside for now." Chapter 1384. If I can obtain the ancestral artifact fragment with time energy, I can put the ancient god seal aside for now. For the first time, Yu Heng's face flashed with excitement. The 3 half-step god lords glanced at each other. Although there was a difference in their eyes, they could all understand Yu Heng. Upon learning of the existence of the ancestral artifact fragment, the 3 half-step god lords were stunned. They had never imagined that they would be able to see this legendary object. Everyone knew, in the ancient, desolate realm of gods, the mainstream divine weapons were divine artifacts. From substandard low, average, all the way to supreme quality. Under normal circumstances, a supreme grade divine artifact was the highest grade divine artifact in the conventional way. Even a majority of rank 9 ancient gods and half-step god lords did not have supreme quality divine artifacts. However, divine artifacts and supreme quality divine artifacts were not the highest quality divine weapons in the ancient god realm. The highest quality was the supreme ancestral artifact. But ancestral artifacts were just a legend. They were so rare that they could be compared to the 8 great god eyes and god kings. Just like the 8 great god eyes, each ancestral artifact was unique. Ancestral artifacts originated from the ancient desolate era, and their power and abilities were not something that the people of the present could fathom. The experts of later generations could only learn of their history from ancient and mythological texts. It existed in the era when the 10,000 ancient races were at their most glorious. When it existed, the number 1 ancient god race dominated the 10,000 races and looked down on the ancient desolate era. When it existed, the dazzling civilization of the Heavens Legacy race had just arrived from beyond the heavens and was looked down upon by the natives of the 10,000 races. When it existed, the light race leisurely traversed through space and time, aloof from the world. When it was at its most glorious, 9 ancient golden crows roasted the world and inflicted calamity upon all the races. When it was at its most glorious, the black destruction serpent dragon unleashed its destruction dragon breath to destroy civilizations and alternate dimensions. When it was at its most glorious, the 8 great god eyes had yet to appear. An ancestral artifact. It was at its most glorious in the era of the 10,000 ancient races, and now it is the era of the 8 great god eyes. Ancient god Jalesia's eyes were tinged with nostalgia. Although the 8 great god eyes were still at its peak and the fan universe was still vast, the experts of the god realm still yearned for the era of the 10,000 ancient races. During that era, the 10,000 ancient races existed, unlike now, where they were either extinct or hidden from the world. How many hundreds of millions of years has it been since the last ancestral artifact appeared? I remember that it created a god king, an existence on par with the 8 great god eyes. Ancient god Ice Jade yearningly said, any ancestral artifact was like a god eye, unique and unique. In the era of the 10,000 primordial races, only the primordial races, the ancient shaman race, the light race, and a few other top-ranked races had produced ancestral artifacts. Ancestral artifacts were just as rare as the 8 great god eyes. An ancestral artifact is not something we can possess. An ancestral artifact fragment is enough to create a god lord, perhaps even an outstanding god lord. Yu Heng said calmly, an ancestral artifact was as lofty as a god eye. There was no need to even think about it. And what was placed in front of him was an ancestral artifact fragment. If this was placed in the outside world, it would probably shake the entire deity realm and cause countless forces and supreme beings to fight over it. If I can control an ancestral artifact fragment, I might be able to challenge a god lord and even win. Ancient god destruction flow and the other half-step god lords were all extremely tempted. At some point, they began to feel greedy. After all, obtaining an ancestral artifact fragment meant that one had a 100% chance of becoming a god lord, and even had a chance of becoming an outstanding god lord. Once one had an ancestral artifact, they would be invincible against those of the same level, even able to kill those of a higher level. There's no need to mention the value of an ancestral artifact fragment, let alone one with a time law. We need to discuss our plan. Yu Heng interrupted their train of thought. Plan. The 3 half-step god lords and the 2 ancient gods all held their breaths in concentration. At this moment, in the face of unprecedented benefits, all of them suddenly became united. As for the ancient god seal and the original plan, they had long ago forgotten about them. They could naturally see that 1 or 2 half-step god lords alone would probably be thrashed by the ancestral artifact fragment. They needed a plan, and they needed to use their wits. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yu Heng turned his gaze to the battle between the ancestral artifact fragment and the stem-borer hive in front of the fortress. Although the stem-borer queen wasn't very strong on its own, it was skilled in reproduction, human wave tactics, and prolonged battles. Insects were constantly being born in the sky-piercing mother nest. At the very beginning, the hive mainly gave birth to two kinds of insects: the lustrous insects and the copper beetles. The two kinds of insects were constantly dying and reproducing in the mother nest. Now, the hive had given birth to a third kind of insect. This was a kind of fat silver-black insect the size of a barrel. These silver-black fat insects had no fighting power, but they were responsible for gathering and transporting materials. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These silver-black fat insects gathered all sorts of minerals and plants, swallowed them into their round bellies, and then sent these materials back to the hive. With the support of these materials, the stem-borer queen was able to reproduce almost limitlessly. For this reason, no matter how many insects died, the hive was still able to transport the lustrous insects and copper beetles like moths to a flame. TSK, several 100 million have died. As expected of the 10th ranked locust moth race. They're skilled in human wave tactics. Any other race ranked slightly higher might not have been able to do the same. The three half-step god lords of ancient Soul Hall were watching the show. Yu Heng was also observing. They were waiting for the right moment, waiting for the locust moth race to consume more of the ancestral artifact fragment's origin energy before attacking. It would be best if both sides were heavily injured. At this moment, Zhao Feng and the giant god race trio began to move. Their goal was not the ancestral artifact fragment, but the many precious materials and treasures in the vicinity of the fortress. Let's go. Everyone, don't get too far away from each other, Xi and Wu Heng said. Swish, swish, swish. The group of five began to fly toward the fortress. Damn flies. An elderly space-time voice spoke, clearly disgusted but also somewhat tired. Bzzz. Strands of time, energy, surged out of the fortress and shot toward the group. In a flash, the movements of Zhao Feng's group of five became extremely slow, as if they were stuck in a swamp. Every movement was extremely difficult. What a powerful time energy. The giant god race trio circulated their divine power to resist, but was extremely strenuous. Resisting time energy consumed far too much divine power, and the effects were not very good. Let's try out my chaos origin divine power. Zhao Feng circulated his divine power to resist the time energy suppression and obstruction. The Chaos Heaven Void origin technique that he primarily cultivated was extremely tolerant and could accommodate all kinds of intents, with space intent being the primary one. When cultivated to a certain level, the Chaos Heaven Void origin technique even possessed a certain devouring ability and could absorb various types of energy. Bzzz. The moment Zhao Feng circulated his Chaos origin divine power, he felt his body lighten. He was much stronger than ancient god resplendence and ancient god Sundermount of the giant god race. However, the two ancient gods of the giant god race were not willing to admit defeat. Boom, boom. In a flash of dazzling light, the two of them began to transform into giants 100 feet tall. After activating their bloodline power, the two of them were clearly able to resist time energy, no weaker than Zhao Feng. As for Xi and Wu Heng, he did not transform. He slightly closed his eyes, and a faint ripple of law energy appeared on his body. Swish! His body suddenly lightened, and he was even able to fly through the air, leaving behind afterimages. As expected of a god lord from my previous life, he comprehended a law and can resist time energy much more easily than an ordinary person. Zhao Feng quietly said to himself. As his cultivation level gradually increased, Xi and Wu Heng's strength from his previous life, including his godlord intent and his comprehension of laws, began to recover more and more. In a flash, the the fastest person on the battlefield was Xian Wuheng. He quickly took out a section of moonlight sky bamboo and specifically picked out the most valuable and rare materials. Zhao Feng did not yield, pouring all his power into time intent. A mysterious layer of light appeared on the surface of his chaos origin divine power. As expected, after pouring all his power into time intent, the power of his chaos origin divine power had greatly increased, making it much easier to resist time energy. Zhao Feng could even vaguely sense that his chaos origin divine power was absorbing a weak sliver of time energy from the outside world. This was the devouring attribute of chaos origin divine power. Zhao Feng was elated. He remembered that chaos origin divine power would only truly begin to absorb and devour after reaching the 4th level. Absorbing and devouring referred to devouring the energy of others to strengthen one's chaos origin divine power. One could easily imagine the advantage it would have in battle. Once my chaos origin divine power reaches the 4th level, I'm 100% certain that I can become a rank 9 ancient god. Zhao Feng began to absorb time energy. The time energy around him was almost tangible. With his peak 3rd level chaos origin divine power, he was able to absorb a little. At the same time, it could also increase Zhao Feng's comprehension of time intent. Of course, Zhao Feng did not forget to harvest the nearby resources and treasures. Meow. The little thieving cat was the main harvesting force. Its body was covered in a strange membrane of light that greatly increased its resistance to time intent. The Heaven's Legacy cat is truly miraculous. It seems to be able to counter the abilities of other races. Zhao Feng said after a moment of thought. In terms of speed, the little thieving cat was on par with Xian Wuheng. In addition, Zhao Feng had released the Black Destruction Serpent Dragon. Its destruction bloodline was able to resist time energy to a certain extent. In terms of manpower and speed, Zhao Feng's side naturally had the advantage. Fortunately, Zhao Feng did not go overboard. He focused on harvesting the resources he didn't have. This was because he had resources like the moonlight sky bamboo that his god spiritual eye could duplicate, even if it consumed a great deal of energy. Zhao Feng didn't even bother with resources that were slightly inferior. Even the little thieving cat strictly followed this standard. Thus, on the surface, the giant god race's side seemed to have gained the most, far more than Zhao Feng's side. Xian Wuheng could also see that Zhao Feng was showing mercy and felt grateful. Half a day later, Zhao Feng's side and the giant god race's side both had a great harvest. The giant god race's side had harvested an enormous amount of resources. With this enormous amount of resources, the giant god race's chances of reviving will increase. The members of the giant god race were very happy. Zhao Feng was also secretly planning to use this enormous amount of resources to develop his own faction in the ancient dream realm. Damn humans and giant god race. If not for the Stembora Queen's attack, you would never have succeeded. A furious voice came from the ancestral artifact fragment. Zhao Feng and the others were stunned, but they couldn't deny it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to fight back against the fragment's time-stop ability. Meow. The little thieving cat jumped onto Zhao Feng's shoulder and waved its paws a few times. Oomph. Heaven's Legacy cat? I know you. The crystallization of the Heaven's Legacy race's intelligence. You can communicate with all things in the world. The ancestral artifact fragment immediately recognized the Heaven's Legacy cat. Meow. The little thieving cat continued to gesture as if suggesting something. What? A flustered and exasperated voice bellowed. You want me to serve your master? How infuriating. I'm a mighty ancestral artifact fragment. Not even god lords care about me, let alone a trifling ancient god. Chapter 1385. I'm a mighty ancestral artifact fragment. Not even a normal god lord would take a fancy to me, let alone a mere ancient god. The space-time voice was filled with anger and disdain. Xian Wuheng and the others were shocked. This tiny fragment was actually an ancestral item fragment. No wonder it possessed such heaven-shaking power. Pop, the power of time in the area where everyone was suddenly doubled in strength. Ancient God Clock Cloud and Ancient God Sundermount went stiff, sweat beating on their foreheads. The invisible time energy was distorting their bodies. The two felt uncomfortable and were forced to return from their giant god form to their normal state. That way, the burden would be smaller. How peculiar. It can cause the flow of time to become chaotic and distort the material space. Any other ancient god would have been torn to shreds. Zhao Feng was speechless. Moreover, the time distortion he and the little thieving cat endured was even stronger. The space-time robe. A dark silver robe appeared on Zhao Feng's body, emitting a translucent silver radiance. The space-time robe was a time and space element treasure refined by a space-time god king. It had an even stronger resistance to space-time attacks. Coupled with the main space's chaos divine power, Zhao Feng easily blocked the time distortion. This rank 8 ancient god isn't simple. No wonder the Heaven's Legacy cat acknowledged him as its master. The ancestral artifact fragment glanced at Zhao Feng. Meow. The light barrier around the little thieving cat's body grew even brighter. With a wave of its paw, it shattered the time distortion in front of it. There's no need to waste your breath. My mission is to guard the forbidden area of our clan. Even if a god eye of your god, era descends, I will not submit. The ancestral artifact fragment remained unmoved, but it sized up Zhao Feng a few more times. The little thieving cat was slightly depressed. If it could obtain an ancestral artifact fragment, it would be of great help to its master. Once it obtained an ancestral artifact fragment, its master would be able to rapidly grow into a titan of the divine realm. Little thieving cat. Zhao Feng couldn't help but smile. He reached out and stroked its furry fur, trying to communicate and comfort it. The ever-victorious little thieving cat also had its moments of failure. But this couldn't be blamed on it. The ancestral artifact fragment had its own mission, and when it was complete, none of the 8 great god eyes had been born. Perhaps the ancestral artifact fragment could see through the 9th god eye's identity, but might not buy it. Even without the ancestral artifact fragment, I would still be able to reach the peak. Furthermore, my harvest from this trip is quite bountiful. Zhao Feng gave a faint smile. The little thieving cat nodded and stopped communicating with the ancestral artifact fragment. Heaven's Legacy cat. In this space, you should worry about your own safety. I can already sense the aura of your old enemy. With these final words, the ancestral artifact fragment ignored them. What was even more surprising was the power of time around them vanished without a trace. For some reason, the ancestral artifact fragment seemed to have dispelled its hostility towards them. This reason was probably related to Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. In front of the ruined castle, the ancestral artifact fragment was channeling time energy to fight back against the Stemborer army. Without having to worry about Zhao Feng and the others, the fragment's power had greatly increased. Gradually, the Stemborer army's attacks became less smooth and more strained. During this period of time, Zhao Feng and the others were no longer suppressed by time energy and were able to harvest the surrounding resources. If the castle was divided into east, west, south, and north, Zhao Feng and the giant god race had already harvested the resources in the east and south. The other 2 sides had yet to act. The west is where the Stemborer hive is mainly attacking, and the north, a harsh light flashed through Zhao Feng's eyes. The north was where the ancient Soul Hall members were hiding. Half a day ago, Zhao Feng had used his Eye of Heaven to investigate and discover the ancient Soul Hall members hiding in the north. The 3 members of the giant god race were rather worried. There's no need to worry for now. Ancient Soul Hall probably arrived long ago. Their main target doesn't seem to be us. Zhao Feng calmly analyzed. There was no need to think about it. Ancient Soul Hall's target was undoubtedly the ancestral artifact fragment. In terms of value, the ancestral artifact fragment was definitely above the ancient god seal. Since we've reaped a bountiful harvest, why don't we use the ancient god seal to return to the outside world and transfer some of the resources? Ancient god Rosy Cloud suggested. She was the weakest of the group, having only recently broken into peak rank 8. She did not want to take too many risks. Are we just going to hand over the ancestral artifact fragment to Ancient Soul Hall? Even if we can't get it, we can't let the enemy have their way. Ancient God Sundermount, on the other hand, was in favor of war. Not long ago, he had broken into rank 9 from peak rank 8, giving him some confidence. Xi and Wuheng thought about it, and felt that both of them had a point. Ancient God Rosy Cloud's proposal was more conservative and dependable, so there was no need to risk their lives. But Ancient God Sundermount's words pointed to the crux of the matter. If Ancient Soul Hall obtained the ancestral artifact fragment, the giant god race would find it very difficult to catch up. On the other hand, if the giant god race obtained the ancestral artifact fragment, the situation would be much more favorable. How about this? Have Ancient God Rosy Cloud transport half of the resources and go back to contact the Patriarch. It would be best if he can get reinforcements. Xi and Wuheng quickly made a decision. In any case, Ancient God Rosy Cloud was the weakest, so she could only be of limited use. The rest of them would stay behind and act according to the situation. Hearing this, everyone agreed. This arrangement was the best of both worlds. Swish! Xi and Wuheng took out the Ancient God Seal and activated it with a Heaven's Legacy secret art. A strange spatial ripple appeared on the surface of the seal, fusing with the surrounding space. At this moment, something unexpected occurred. Buzz! A powerful spatial pressure came from nowhere, and the Ancient God Seal let out a hum and dimmed a little. What? Xi and Wuheng grimaced and fell into thought. What was going on? Ancient God Rosy Cloud and Ancient God Sundermount were both stunned. The Ancient God Seal was the key to entering and exiting this dimension. There's probably a God Lord level expert laying down an ancient spatial sealing array outside. There's probably more than one God Lord, and they need to be skilled in Heaven's Legacy secret arts. Xi and Wuheng sighed. We have no way out. Everyone glanced at each other, their expressions turning grave. It was no wonder that Ancient Soul Hall had not come to take the Ancient God Seal for now. What level of power is needed to forcefully break through this dimension? Zhao Feng asked. Xi and Wuheng closed his eyes, and after a while, he said, to use the Ancient God Seal, one also needs strength approaching the God Lord level. And this was with the Ancient God Seal. That's not too bad. Since there's no way out, let's put everything on the line. Zhao Feng's face was cold and determined. At this moment, on the western side of the fortress, the Moth army was still launching an endless stream of attacks while the ancestral artifact fragment was focused on defense. The two sides were locked in a prolonged battle. On the northern side of the fortress, the Ancient Soul Hall members were hiding. Zhao Feng's group had already gathered all the resources on the eastern and southern sides. Since Ancient Soul Hall isn't going to move, let's bide our time. Zhao Feng's body flickered as he vanished. The only thing left was the space-time robe, its dazzling, translucent luster. He entered the space-time robe. Zhao Feng immediately adjusted the time ratio, reaching an astonishing 25:1. As expected, Zhao Feng muttered. Earlier, when he was using Chaos Origin Divine Power to deal with the ancestral artifact fragment's time energy, he had absorbed some of it, allowing his comprehension of time to advance once more. One had to realize that the ancestral artifact fragment contained a time law, and any time intended exuded was its essence. Swish! Swish! He closed his eyes, and several more time resources appeared in front of him. These time resources were basically all on the same level as the Moonlight Sky Bamboo. And then, he circulated his Chaos Origin Divine Power to comprehend the few strands of time intent he had absorbed. At the same time, he divided his mind into two. Half of his mind was focused on absorbing and comprehending the time treasures in front of him. The other half of his mind was using Chaos Origin Divine Power to try and absorb the time essence of these treasures. This was especially true for the second method, which he had never tried before. This was because the Chaos Heaven Void origin technique had faintly touched upon the fourth level, allowing it to gain the ability to devour and absorb. To Zhao Feng's delight, this kind of experiment had made its understanding of time Upanishad advance by leaps and bounds. It was like 1,000 miles in a day. One reason was to absorb the time intent essence of the ancestral artifact fragment. The other reason was the devouring effect of chaos origin divine power. With these two aspects working together, in just 2 days, Zhao Feng's time intent had reached the peak of level 6. Peak level 6 time intent, and my chaos origin divine power has advanced again. Zhao Feng could vaguely sense that his chaos origin divine power was already half a step into the 4th level. The effect was that his chaos origin divine power's devouring effect was even more pronounced, and its power had increased by half a level. Time slowly passed. 25 days had passed within the space-time robe, but only 1 day had passed in the outside world. At this moment, the 8 divine stages in Zhao Feng's body had undergone a brand new transformation. The chaos origin divine power they exuded was boundlessly vast and seemed to be able to contain all things. At the same time, the outline of a 9th divine stage appeared on the 8th divine stage, and it was gradually becoming more solid. Not only that, the embryonic form of the 9th divine altar was surrounded by an enormous flow of divine power. This stream of divine power was the 9th stream left behind after he had consumed the 9 lotus jade life flower. If I were to consume this 9th stream right now, I would be 100% certain that I would be able to form my 9th divine stage and reach rank 9 of the ancient god realm. Zhao Feng took in a deep breath. Such rapid progress was not only because he had consumed the jade nether spirit essence stone and the 9 lotus jade life flower, but also because his chaos origin divine power had reached a higher level. And now, Zhao Feng's chaos origin divine power had basically stepped into the 4th level. The power of his chaos origin divine power had more than doubled. At this moment, he could effortlessly become a rank 9 ancient god. But he did not do this. After rank 9 is the God Lord realm. I have to stabilize my foundation for rank 9 as much as possible. Zhao Feng's gaze was even more distant. Next, he began to refine his chaos origin divine power and comprehend space-time intent. Since ancient times, it has been said that space-time is one. I wonder what will happen if I fuse my Chaos Heaven Void origin techniques, main space with time energy. Zhao Feng smiled. Now that his Chaos origin divine power had stepped into the 4th level, his space intent had forcefully broken into level 8. This was because when Zhao Feng comprehended time intent, he had used it as a foundation to comprehend space intent. This foundation was the main space, the Chaos Heaven Void origin technique that could contain all things. Level 8 space intent, peak level 6 time intent. This was Zhao Feng's current level of space-time intent. But Zhao Feng was not satisfied with just this. He continued to fuse time and space intent and refine his chaos origin divine power. At this moment, the flow of time within the space-time robe had reached an astonishing rate of 30-1. In the outside world, Xi and Wuhing's group of 3 could vaguely sense the astonishing divine power surging within the space-time robe. Could that Zhao Feng be forming his 9th divine stage? Ancient God Sundermount said. He entered the ancestral legacy treasury and only recently reached rank 8, but he's already trying to break into rank 9. Even if he succeeds, his foundation will probably be unstable. Ancient God Resplendence softly sighed. The 2 ancient gods were not optimistic about Zhao Feng's chances of breaking through. Chapter 1386. Outside the space-time robe, the little thieving cat stood guard. It paid no attention to the worries and pessimism of the 2 ancient gods. There's no need for us to worry about Brother Zhao. Xi and Wuheng opened his eyes from his cultivation. Without the restriction of resources, he was recovering faster and faster from his last life, and a ripple of the law would occasionally appear on his body. In the outside world, 3 or 4 days had passed. Within the space-time robe, more than 100 days had passed. Swish! The space-time robe flashed, and a silver-haired youth appeared, causing space-time ripples to appear around him. Zhao Feng. Everyone turned to Zhao Feng. At this moment, Zhao Feng had a boundlessly profound aura that seemed to contain all things. His eyes flashed with a dazzling silver luster, and when they looked at each other, they felt as if space and time were in chaos. They couldn't see through him at all. Any divine sense or divine power that got close to Zhao Feng was devoured by a strange force field. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount glanced at each other, unable to conceal the shock on their faces. Congratulations, Brother Zhao. Your divine arts have advanced greatly. Only Xi and Wuheng could see a little of Zhao Feng's strength, but there was a complicated look in his eyes. Brother Zhao, you become a rank 9 ancient god? Ancient God Sundermount couldn't help but ask. Although I haven't broken through, there's not much of a difference. Zhao Feng faintly smiled. In his cultivation, he had digested what he had gained from the ancestral legacy treasury, and his strength had soared. What did he mean? Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount didn't understand. Zhao Feng slowly raised his hand, and the divine power in his palm began to exude a turbid silver luster. The moment the turbid divine power appeared, the surrounding time power actually began to dissipate at a speed visible to the naked eye. What terrifying divine power! The 3 members of the giant god race, including Xi and Wuheng, all felt their hearts tremble. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount also felt the divine power in their bodies become chaotic and uneasy. The strength and ripples of this divine power clearly surpassed that of an ordinary rank 9 ancient god. The fusion of the time and space profundities, the chaos divine power, has probably surpassed the scope of the original cultivation technique. In this space, the suppression of the time profundities on me is already very small. Zhao Feng withdrew his divine power and smiled in satisfaction. Whoosh! Suddenly, Zhao Feng's figure disappeared into thin air, accompanied by a spatial fluctuation. What? Xi and Wuheng and the other 2 were dumbfounded. In the next instant, a dreamy silver-haired youth appeared several miles behind them. Teleportation. Even under the extreme suppression of this space, he can still use teleportation. The members of the giant god race were stunned. At this moment, the impact that Zhao Feng gave them was too great. Not even becoming a rank 9 ancient god could give them such a massive shock. You should know, not even half-step god lords could use instant movement in this dimension. Congratulations, Brother Zhao. Your space-time intent has reached a whole new level. Xi and Wuheng was overjoyed. He understood what Zhao Feng's behavior meant. My space intent has reached level 8 small success, and my time intent has touched upon level 7. Together with the supreme quality divine artifact that is the space-time robe, I should have no match in this dimension for the space-time Tao. Zhao Feng said to himself. After more than 100 days of cultivation, he had surpassed the 4th level of chaos origin, allowing his strength to take a qualitative leap. Until now, other than cultivation, Zhao Feng was also facing a bottleneck in his comprehension of space-time intent. There wouldn't be any effect even if he continued to comprehend it. As for cultivation, Zhao Feng was half a step into the rank 9 ancient god level. If he wanted to, he could absorb the 9 streams sealed on his divine stages and easily break through to rank 9. He didn't even need the sealed stream to advance, but he couldn't break through at any time. But in order to accumulate even more reserves, Zhao Feng continued to suppress his cultivation and not break through. It's been 4 days. Are the insects still attacking? The ancient soul race is truly patient. Have they been watching this entire time? Zhao Feng began to observe the situation. In the end, he discovered that the ancient soul race was extremely patient, as if they were worried about something. Meanwhile, the Locust Moth Queen's attacks were gradually weakening, and the rate at which it produced new insects was slowing down. Although the silver-black fat insects were providing the stem-borer queen with an endless supply of resources, the stem-borer queen was still consuming a certain amount of its soul energy. Ah, little insects, you failed again. The space-time voice spoke once more, this time with the attitude of a victor, but this voice was tinged with exhaustion. Another 2 days passed. The stem-borer queen's attacks gradually came to a stop, as if it was resting. However, the silver-black fatworm that acted as logistics was still gathering large amounts of raw materials from the rear. The stem-borer queen apparently hadn't completely given up. But one thing was certain. Both sides had expended a great deal of energy and were beginning to rest. On the northern side of the fortress, the time has come. We can begin. Ewing opened his eyes. At some point, his cultivation had reached the peak of rank 9. That was great. The 3 half-step god lords and the 2 ancient gods immediately rubbed their fists and rubbed their palms in excitement. If one looked carefully, the weakest of these people was a rank 9 ancient god. While the giant god race was progressing in this mysterious dimension, their enemies were also making significant progress. Then what about the giant god race? Those scoundrels probably also want the ancestral artifact fragment. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to linger. The ancient Soul Hall members seethed with killing intent. They truly are a hindrance. Yu Heng's brow creased as he sternly said, "Let's get rid of these people first. At the very least, we need to kill Xi and Wu Heng and heavily injure them so that they don't affect our plan." Their primary plan was to obtain the ancestral artifact fragment. If the giant god race wasn't nearby, they might not have attacked, but since they were nearby, they naturally had to get rid of them. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The group of 5, all rank 9 ancient gods or above, circled around the ancient fortress and approached the giant god race. On the eastern side of the fortress, ancient Soul Hall, they're here. Zhao Feng had his hands behind his back, a calm expression on his face. Ancient god Resplendence and ancient god Sundermount both grimaced in shock. In their clashes with the giant god race, they had generally been at a disadvantage. But now, the 3 half-step god lords of ancient Soul Hall were working together, leaving behind only their elites. Their strength was even more unfathomable. What do you mean? Xi and Wu Heng saw that Zhao Feng wasn't moving and asked. "Let's fight for now," Zhao Feng sternly said. "There's one person in this group that I can't see through." Okay. Xi and Wu Heng actually agreed without even thinking about it. Ancient god Resplendence and ancient god Sundermount, on the other hand, had anxious and worried expressions. These were 3 half-step god lords. How could Lord Wu Heng accompany this madman in his madness? They didn't understand. What right did Zhao Feng have to challenge 3 half-step god lords and remain so calm? There's no need to worry. Zhao Feng mainly wants to probe them. Xi and Wu Heng's message calmed them down. At this moment, several powerful auras began to approach from the distance. Haha, a few giant god race minions actually dare to fight? That's true. In terms of speed, our ancient Soul Hall has the absolute advantage. It's useless for them to run. The 3 half-step god lords, Ocean Prison, Ice Jade, and Flow of Destruction, were the first to charge forward. Behind them were 2 rank 9 ancient gods, including ancient god Mu Yu, who was skilled in arrays. The last one was Yu Heng. Yu Heng was responsible for bringing up the rear. His brow furrowed as he muttered, "There's definitely something strange going on. According to the original plan, the giant god race members should have avoided our edge." He's not going forward. Zhao Feng's god spiritual, I could clearly see Yu Heng at the very back. The only person in the ancient Soul Hall camp that he couldn't see through was that mysterious youth. Kill. The 3 half-step god lords were the first to charge forward. Thousand Rivers, Ice Domain. Ancient god Ice Jade's body exploded with dazzling, icy light. Her beautiful eyes half closed as she lightly waved her hand through the air. At this moment, her body wreathed in ice began to faintly ripple with an ice law. 1 second later, everything in a radius of 1,000 li was frozen by streams of ice. 1,000 li frozen. In this dimension, with the powerful time suppression, 1,000 li was an unimaginable distance. And this was not the end. The 1,000 li frozen was only the prelude to this large-scale secret skill. Boom, 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 the earth shook. Glaciers that were thousands of feet tall stood between the heavens and the earth, forming a vast, extreme river domain. Oh no! The giant god race members were surrounded by glaciers of extreme cold, all of them connected together into a strange array that exuded a freezing energy. For a moment, the speed of the three members of the giant god race suddenly dropped, their bloodlines and divine power freezing, and their overall strength dropped by 30%. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount were forced to immediately activate their giant god transformation to neutralize the invasion of cold energy. But the two of them only had 60 to 70% of their original speed. These people have been hit by my Thousand Rivers ice domain. They're like cornered beasts. Ancient God Ice Jade softly chuckled. With such a vast terrain, it was suitable for such a large area of effect secret skill. She was the strongest of the three half-step god lords, and her first move was enough to trap the giant god race members. She was responsible for trapping them, while the other two half-step god lords attacked. The first to charge out of the giant god race side was Zhao Feng. His space-time robe rippled with space-time as he charged at the three half-step god lords. This kid really doesn't fear death. Ancient God JLC jeered. The other two half-step god lords also faintly smiled, but they quickly found it impossible to laugh. So fast. Such intense space-time ripples. Even the time intent of this dimension will find it hard to suppress him. Zhao Feng sped up once more, and he instantly shot through the gap between the three half-step god lords to attack the two rank 9 ancient gods behind him. Go! Ancient God JLC waved his hand, and with a roar in the soul dimension, a pitch-black crocodile soul beast lunged at Zhao Feng. No matter how fast you are, do you think you can dodge a soul attack? Ancient God JLC confidently said. Soul attacks normally surpass the physical dimension. Moreover, this soul beast was raised by the soul race and had a mind of its own, allowing it to track down and bite its foes. Swish! The crocodile soul beast lunged at empty air, leaving behind a space-time ripple. Zhao Feng's figure vanished into thin air. Instant movement? How could this be? The three half-step god lords grimaced, and then they cried out, "Watch out!" But their warning came too late. A scream came from a rank 9 ancient god in the back. A dreamy silver-haired youth floated in the air, his palms suffused with twisting and turbid divine power that pierced through his body. Bzzz. Then, a distorted force field of chaos devoured his body and soul bit by bit. No, the rank 9 ancient god wanted to struggle free, but all his divine power was in chaos and inexplicably drained away. His body and mind were both slowed down by this invisible energy, and he had almost no strength to resist. Chapter 1387. As the three half-step god lords watched, Zhao Feng vanished and pierced through the rank 9 ancient god's body. This rank 9 ancient god was also from the ancient soul race. An ordinary rank 9 ancient god would at most be able to heavily injure him, not kill him. But at this moment, his body and mind were slowed down by the invisible time energy. The dreadful chaos origin force field devoured his entire body, causing his soul energy, divine power, and other energies to be thrown into disarray. Devour and absorb. Not only did the chaos origin divine power in Zhao Feng's palm not weaken, it actually swelled in power. The dreadful force field tore apart the rank 9 ancient god. From instant movement to ambush, the entire process had taken less than 2 seconds. Junior, the three half-step god lords were dumbstruck, and then they were filled with rage and killing intent. Zhao Feng had easily killed a rank 9 ancient god right before their eyes. This was a humiliation to the three half-step godlords. Darkwater Jail Dragon. Ancient god Jailsea's arm slowly unfurled. Bzzz. The arm strangely turned into a black liquid. Then, it suddenly expanded, turning into a serene water-hell dragon that was 1,000 feet long. Roar. The roar of this Darkwater Jail dragon shook the world, shaking the soul dimension. Invisible gales and waves of energy began to destroy all things. Oh no! Xin Wuhan grimaced. A level 9 intent Blackwater secret art fused with a soul attack of the ancient soul race. This was a powerful secret art of a half-step godlord. A full power attack was enough to instantly kill an ordinary rank 9. He was just about to intervene when ancient god destruction flow stopped him. Your opponent is me. Ancient god destruction flow's hands began to spin, and a pitch-black river of destruction appeared on each arm. This ancient god destruction flow was skilled in destruction intent. As a half-step godlord, his destruction intent had reached level 9 intent, and he was slightly stronger than ancient god Jailsea. Kaboom! The two rivers of destruction seemed berserk, but they were as nimble and bizarre as black snakes as they entangled Xin Wuhan. Although Xin Wuhan didn't fear ancient god destruction flow, he would definitely be held down for a while, unable to worry about Zhao Feng. On the other side, level 9 water profundity and the bloodline and soul secret art of the ancient soul race. Zhao Feng felt an oppressive crisis. Yet he was so calm and composed that after killing a rank 9 ancient god, he didn't forget to take his interspatial tool. Roar! The towering Netherwater Hell dragon charged over and swallowed his body. Hee. A chuckle came from the top of the Netherwater Hell dragon's head, accompanied by an obscure space-time ripple. Damn it, ancient god Jailsea's face was cold and sinister, but he did not give up. The Netherwater Hellworm was formed from one of his arms, and its agility was no different from his own limbs. Bang! All of a sudden, the Darkwater Hell Dragon swung its tail at Zhao Feng. Whoosh! Zhao Feng vanished into thin air, and the Netherwater Nether Dragon's attack missed once more. It seems like one Nether Hell Dragon isn't enough to deal with him. We have to attack from all sides. Ancient God, Jailsea quickly regained his composure. After entering the Ancestral Legacy Treasury, he had matured. After suffering time and time again, he no longer dared to underestimate his foe. Cage Dragon Claw. Ancient God Jailsea had a solemn expression. His other arm transformed into a translucent black liquid that transformed into a Cage Dragon Claw several hundred feet long. Whoosh! The Cage Dragon Claw attacked Zhao Feng from the rear, while working with the Netherwater Hell Dragon to attack from the front. Zhao Feng's in trouble. Ancient God Resplendence and Ancient God Sundermount couldn't help but worry. However, they were about to face the attack of another rank 9 Ancient God Muyu. And that wasn't all. Ancient God Ice Jade's Thousand Rivers Ice Domain had frozen an area for 1,000 li around them. Boom! The surrounding glaciers were slowly shrinking, and the cold energy gathered was constantly climbing. As time passed, the space in which they could fight would shrink. The two ancient gods of the giant god race were being frozen in cold energy, and their bloodlines, divine power, and speed were both greatly affected. Under ancient god Ice Jade's control, the Thousand Rivers Ice Domain primarily affected the enemy. Even when the two ancient gods of the giant god race worked together, they were still suppressed by ancient god Muyu. However, Xin Wuhan and Zhao Feng were not very affected by the cold energy. Half-step god lords are only SOSO. A frivolous and playful voice came from a corner of the battlefield. Ooish! Zhao Feng turned into a blur in the air, his speed suddenly increasing to a whole new level. Bang bang! The attacks of the Netherwater Hell Dragon and the Cage Dragon Claw missed, but two nearby glaciers that were more than 1,000 zhang tall were pulverized. At this moment, Zhao Feng didn't use instant movement. He relied solely on his speed to easily dodge the attacks. As for the cold energy of the Thousand Rivers Ice Domain, it had very little effect on him. He had the protection of the space-time robe and the devouring ability of chaos origin divine power. The cold energy around him was like a stone sinking into the ocean. My next target is to kill you. Zhao Feng floated in the air and pointed at ancient god Mu Yu on the other side of the battlefield. Ancient god Mu Yu was fighting with two ancient gods of the giant god race. When he heard this, his face froze and cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Just now, he had clearly seen the death of the other rank 9 ancient god of his race. Junior, don't be so arrogant. Ancient god Ice Jade, who was maintaining the shrinking Thousand Rivers ice domain, coldly said. Truly too arrogant. Ancient god JLC was both shocked and furious. His opponent was openly naming people on his side to kill them. Earlier, Zhao Feng had killed a rank 9 ancient god right under the eyes of 3 half-step god lords. The success at that time was attributed to the ambush and the element of surprise. But now, Zhao Feng had named another rank 9 ancient god to kill. Ancient god Mu Yu. Not good. Not even a half-step god lord can do anything to this person. Ancient god Mu Yu was unsettled. Even though they had the advantage, they had no desire to fight with the 2 ancient gods of the giant god race. With us here, you won't succeed. The half-step god lords, Ice Jade and JLC, glanced at each other, their expressions harsh. If they allowed Zhao Feng to succeed again, putting aside the loss of a rank 9 combatant, what face would they have left? If I want to kill him, none of you will be able to stop me. Zhao Feng's expression was indifferent. Impossible. Ancient god JLC ordered the Darkwater Jail Dragon to stand guard at ancient god Mu Yu's side. The other Jail Dragon Claw continued to bite down on Zhao Feng. Ice Jade Lotus Platform. Ancient god Ice Jade waved her hand, and a dazzling lotus platform of ice appeared under ancient god Mu Yu's feet. Although she was maintaining the shrinking Thousand Rivers ice domain, she could still provide a certain amount of support. Moreover, once the ice domain successfully shrank and formed a terrifying ice divine kingdom, the enemy would find it difficult to escape. Soon, with the Ice Jade Lotus platform and the Darkwater Jail Dragon protecting him, ancient god Mu Yu was greatly reassured. Ha ha ha! Zhao Feng gave a long laugh, his body exploding with powerful space-time ripples. Buzz! Swish! His body vanished, and this instant movement covered a rather large distance. Ancient god Ice Jade was startled. A moment later, she sensed a space-time ripple in ancient god JLC's area. Careful! Ancient god Ice Jade grimaced and couldn't help but warn. As for ancient god JLC, his shoulders were empty. His hands had transformed into the Darkwater Jail Dragon and the Jail Dragon Claw to fight. In this way, the strength of his main body, especially his defense, would be much weaker. Upon hearing ancient god Ice Jade's warning, he sensed the faint space-time ripples behind him and immediately cursed. Chaos Origin Divine Fist. A dark silver fist instantly hit his body amidst a strange distortion of time and space. There was simply no way to dodge this punch. This was because this punch was accelerated to the extreme by time intent, and ancient god JLC even felt like space-time had been thrown into disorder. I've been tricked. His target was ancient god JLC. Ancient god Ice Jade clenched her teeth. Ancient god JLC was at his weakest, and this dreadful attack was also fraught with danger. Kaboom! Ancient god JLC was sent flying, a trickle of blood trickling down the corner of his lips. As expected of a half-step godlord, he's comprehended level 9 intent. Zhao Feng muttered. Suddenly, ancient god JLC's body was covered in a layer of dark water that greatly buffered Zhao Feng's chaos origin attack. Given his opponent's half-step god lord cultivation and the foundation of the ancient soul race bloodline, this punch was only able to wound him, not take his life. Meow! A nimble cat appeared behind ancient god JLC, and a silver dagger covered in runes slashed at ancient god JLC in a cold and sinister arc. An ambush! Ancient god Ice Jade's body trembled as her heart chilled. This kid's schemes were far too terrifying. On the surface, Zhao Feng said that he was going to kill ancient god Mu Yu, but in reality, he was dealing with ancient god JLC. Swoosh! The silver dagger stabbed into ancient god JLC's dark water ripple body. Oh! Even in his dark water form, ancient god JLC grunted, his body going stiff and his face turning pale. Celestial Jade Secret Blade. Yu Heng, who was still at the back, spoke for the first time. The little thieving cat had obtained the Celestial Jade Secret Blade from the Heavenly Demon Hall's treasury, and it had infuriated the upper echelon members of the Heavenly Demon Hall. This blade was a secret creation of the Heaven's legacy race. A few unique materials had been added to it, and it could be considered a supreme quality, offensive divine artifact. Yu Heng remained in the rear, not within the range of the Thousand Rivers ice domain. It was as if he had no intention of attacking. Or perhaps he had some misgivings. Spatial movement. Zhao Feng focused his left eye, instantly putting away the little thieving cat that had succeeded in its sneak attack. A moment later, boom, boom. Two glaciers 10,000 feet high within the Thousand Rivers ice domain soared into the sky and stabbed at Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. The power of these attacks was equivalent to a peak rank 9. As the Thousand Rivers ice domain shrank, ancient god Ice Jade was able to divert some of her attention to attack. Although Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat managed to dodge the charge of the two glaciers, they succeeded in interrupting their attacks on ancient god JLC. Go! Ancient god Ice Jade lightly raised her hand. Swish! A second Ice Jade Lotus platform appeared under ancient god JLC's feet, giving him another layer of defense. After all, he could not afford to lose a half-step godlord. Collect! Ancient god JLC had no choice but to take back the caged dragon giant claw and restore an arm so that he could protect himself. Just now, Zhao Feng's sudden attack and the little thieving cat's ambush had inflicted significant injuries on him, causing him to feel some lingering fear. After heavily injuring ancient god JLC, Zhao Feng chuckled, a hint of success in his scheme appearing on his face. Not good. Ancient god Ice Jade suddenly thought of something. But a moment later, another shocking development occurred. Chaos Origin Divine Fist. The dreamy silver-haired youth appeared behind ancient god Mu Yu. Crack! The Ice Jade Lotus platform around ancient god Mu Yu instantly shattered. Because ancient god Ice Jade had put more of her energy into defending ancient god JLC, ancient god Mu Yu's defenses had actually weakened. Kaboom! After piercing through the Ice Jade Lotus platform, Zhao Feng's turbid silver fist absorbed some of the cold energy and was still gathering power. No! Ancient god Mu Yu cried out in alarm as he did all he could to preserve his life. But what could he do? He was facing the attacks of ancient god Resplendence and ancient god Sundermount, putting him in desperate straits. And there was something even more terrifying. An invisible ripple of space-time engulfed his body. In a flash, all his movements seemed to slow down. His speed was reduced by several dozen times. Even though his mind had reacted by turning his body into an ancient soul body, his movements were still too slow. Tom intent. This was the only thought left in ancient god Mu Yu's mind before his death. Ice Jade and Black Prison, the two half-step godlords, were too late to stop him. Their faces were gloomy and their hearts chilled. They had been tricked time and time again by Zhao Feng, led by the nose. At the start, they believed that Zhao Feng's target was ancient god Mu Yu. They hadn't expected for him to set up an ambush for ancient god JLC. Ancient god JLC had just escaped danger when Zhao Feng's spear turned once more. Finally, he launched a counterattack. With a miserable scream in the soul dimension, ancient god Mu Yu, an array grandmaster, had both his body and soul annihilated by Zhao Feng's group of 3. I said before, if I want to kill him, none of you can stop me. Zhao Feng casually took ancient god Mu Yu's interspatial tool, adding another portion to his spoils of war. There were many opportunities in this dimension, and the ancient soul race members wouldn't be much worse off than the giant god race members. Ancient god Ice Jade was trembling in anger, but ancient god JLC had a hint of joy on his face. Brother Zhao, well done. Xian Wuheng gave a long laugh. At this moment, he was not in his giant god form, but he was actually able to fight evenly with ancient god destruction flow. In this battle, Xian Wuheng's body was faintly suffused with the aura of a law, and he would occasionally unleash a god lord level attack. One could say that his current cultivation level was that of a half-step god lord. If he transformed into his giant god form, he would be able to easily crush ancient god destruction flow. Dead again? The two of you, just what are you doing? Ancient god destruction flow was on the verge of cursing out loud. He alone was bitterly holding off Xian Wuheng's attacks, while the other two half-step god lords should have been able to deal with several rank 8 and rank 9 ancient gods with ease. But in just a few short moments, 2 rank 9 ancient gods have been killed. You 3 fools. This person has already reached the peak of speed, but you actually fought with him and lost 2 rank 9 ancient gods. Yu Heng couldn't help but curse from the rear. As a bystander, he had a much clearer view of the situation. But everything had happened too quickly, and Zhao Feng's calculations were mixed with truth and falsehood, so he had no time to stop them. Moreover, there was no time for him to reprimand these 3 half-step god lords. His troubles had come. Swish! Swish! At this moment, the voices of the Insect Sea Army came from behind Yu Heng. It's that energy, it's actually that energy. My locust moth, race's greatest foe. I'll tear you to shreds. The Stamborer Queen's voice, suffused with bone-chilling hatred, resounded through the soul. Its target was none other than Yu Heng. In a flash, the billions of Stamborer descendants swallowed up the world, transforming into a vast sea of insects that lunged at Yu Heng. Chapter 1388. Within the Thousand Rivers Ice Field. Swish, swish, swish. The 3 half-step god lords had grim expressions as they stood side by side, with ancient god Ice Jade at the center. Zhao Feng had used his superior speed to kill 2 rank 9 ancient gods and even heavily injure a half-step god lord. This was a massive blow to them and made them put their guards up. They could not afford to lose anymore. Fortunately, with the 3 half-step god lords working together, even if Zhao Feng was twice as fast, he would still find it difficult to find an opening. But at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. Swoosh, swoosh, swish, swish. Behind Yu Heng, an army of Stamborers surged forth. They glared at Yu Heng with hatred and swallowed the heavens and earth. Both sides felt a chill in their hearts at this sight. Once the Locust Moth tribe truly resorted to human wave tactics, even beings with higher cultivation bases would have to flee at the mere sight of them. What's going on? Zhao Feng and the 3 giant god race members were dumbfounded. The 3 half-step god lords of the ancient soul race had even nastier expressions. At this moment, they were in an even more unfavorable situation. In front of them was the giant god race, and behind them was the Locust's army. What do we do? The 3 of them asked Yu Heng, who was in charge of guarding the rear. When the plan was activated, Yu Heng had requested that they remain at the rear and that their energy be extremely restrained so that they would not recklessly attack. They suspected that Yu Heng had been the one who had attracted the Locust race here. At this moment, at the very front of the insect sea, Yu Heng stood alone and calmly said, "The insect race truly has a keen sense of smell." It was as if he had predicted the reaction of these insects. Come and rendezvous with us. Yu Heng finally gave an order to the 3 half-step god lords. The 3 half-step god lords paled at these words. This rendezvous? Do you want us to fight the Locust's race head-on? That's not a wise choice. The 3 hesitated, but they did not disobey. Before opening the ancestral legacy treasury, they had received a clear order to obey this mysterious youth. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 half-step god lords swiftly retreated to rendezvous with Yu Heng. Zhao Feng's group could not stop them, and they were also desperately trying to avoid the locust army. The consequences of being trapped in the insect sea were unimaginable. What were these fellows planning? First, you wanted to kill us, and now you're giving up. The members of the giant god race were all confused. Zhao Feng and Xian Wuheng looked at each other and quickly came to a decision. Let's wait and see. If the situation turns bad, I'll put all of you into the space-time robe, and then escape won't be hard. Zhao Feng muttered. The only person he couldn't see through in the ancient soul race camp was Yu Hong. It was a pity that the other party had refused to help in the previous battles. Is that you from the ancient soul race? Zhao Feng suddenly asked. No. Xian Wuheng and the others were certain without even thinking about it. As the mortal enemies of the ancient soul race, the giant god race was extremely sensitive to bloodline auras. Zhao Feng had long sensed that the mysterious young man's bloodline aura was extremely obscure and unfathomable. At this moment, Yu Hong and the three half-step god lords gathered together. The wave of insects lunged forward, but the three half-step god lords easily annihilated them. In front of a half-step god lord, these insects were no different from ants. The locust moth race's human wave tactic was secondary in terms of killing power. What was terrifying was the consumption. With our strength, if we work together, defeating the locust moth queen isn't too difficult. It's just that the consumption is too great. The gains don't seem to make up for the losses. Ancient god destruction Flo voiced his doubts. Yu Hong stood in the middle and calmly ordered, once the insect race is defeated, we'll go straight for the ancestral artifact fragment. What? The three half-step god lords were dumbfounded. The insect race was defeated? Go straight for the ancestral artifact fragment? They didn't quite understand what Yu Hong meant. What if we expend a lot of energy to defeat the insect race, and the giant god race members counterattack? Ancient god Ice Jade was rather unhappy. This Yu Hong was too arrogant. Did he not know what sort of price they would have to pay to defeat the insect race? First, it's enough for me to do it. Second, they don't dare. Yu Heng's face gradually became impatient. You alone? The three half-step god lords were stunned, and then they found this rather funny. The only thing we missed out was that kid. In this divine kingdom dimension, he has the advantage of speed. Yu Hong muttered. The advantage of speed was truly difficult to deal with. According to his original plan, if he and the others attacked, the giant god race would definitely retreat. He hadn't expected for Zhao Feng to choose to attack and probe Yu Heng's strength. This way, he wouldn't be able to leave the ancient fortress. Once his energy leaked out, the insect race would sense it. In the end, the locust queen's sense of smell was even more terrifying than he had imagined. For a moment, the ancient soul race camp was being outflanked. In this situation, he could only reveal some of his strength. All of you should rest first. Yu Hong slightly raised a hand, his body exuding a strange and ancient energy. In this process, a layer of simple and unadorned tattoos appeared on his body, like both fish scales and tortoise patterns. It's that energy. Kill. You destroyed my home and hunted down my mother and grandmother. I swear that I will pulverize all of you. The insect queen's cold voice came from the giant nest in the rear of the insect army. More and more insects flew over. In fact, the sky-high nest had even given up on attacking the castle and was flying towards them. This sight made the three half-step god lords jump in fright. The attacks of the insects were far too frenzied. A bunch of ants thinks they can stop me? A cold smile appeared on Yu Heng's handsome face, and then the ancient patterns that appeared on the surface of his body suddenly disappeared. At the same time, that energy has been restrained again. The ancestral artifact fragment muttered in front of the ancient fortress. This energy caused the craziness of the insect race to rapidly restrain itself. And then, Yu Hong proudly stood his ground, his arms slowly spreading apart, his body exuding an ancient and abyssal energy. This ancient energy grew stronger and stronger, exuding a tyrannical aura that disdained both past and present. Boom! Dooish! This tyrannical bloodline energy soared into the sky, accompanied by gold and silver energy that caused even space itself to faintly tremble. Even from far away, Zhao Feng and the others could see the bloodline energy that seemed to dominate the heavens. This bloodline energy was surrounded by gold and silver energy, and in the center was the image of a majestic ancient god-devil. Bzze. The image of the ancient god-devil attached itself to Yu Heng's body and began to grow more and more corporeal. Yu Heng's face, body, and hair began to visibly transform, becoming more and more like the image of the ancient god-devil attached to his body. In the blink of an eye, Yu Heng's body grew to a height of 100 feet, gold and silver energy crisscrossing his body, and he exuded an ancient energy that disdained the world. What's going on? The three half-step god lords found it hard to breathe, their bodies and bloodlines uncontrollably trembling. At this moment, they found it hard to even think about exerting any strength. The distant giant god race members were panic-stricken, their bloodlines inexplicably surging with fear and submission. Just what kind of bloodline is this? Zhao Feng felt like his bloodline was going out of control, and even the chaos origin divine power in his body was in chaos. It wasn't just his body. Even as God's spiritual, I was trembling. The dreamy silver origin energy in the center of the God's spiritual, I was trembling restlessly. Why? Zhao Feng held his head with his hands and felt a dizziness that went straight to his soul. An aura of fear began to spread through the world. The hundreds of millions of stem borers, upon approaching Yu Heng, began to tremble and prostrate themselves on the ground. Bang! The sky-high nest floating in the air crashed down from the sky, sending up a cloud of dust. How? The stem borer queen's fearful voice resounded through the world. The 10th-ranked stem borer race also trembled in fear in the face of this energy. At the same time, the ancestral artifact fragment was panic-stricken in front of the ruined castle. Impossible. This is impossible. This is the era of the God Eye. Why would it appear? Suppress the 10,000 races. The ancient god devil that Yu Heng had transformed into began to exude a dark gold and silver luster as it slowly spoke in a heaven-shaking voice. At this moment, the world resonated, and all living beings with bloodlines shrieked in fear. Plush, plush, plush. The hundreds of millions of insects exploded under the bloodline energy that suppressed the 10,000 races. Aya! Some of the nearby Yao God races hidden underground were also not spared. The lighter ones began to bleed from their orifices, while the heavier ones exploded. Boom! Space trembled as if a wave of blood had swept through all things. Wah! Wah! The distant ancient god Resplendence and ancient god Sundermount both vomited blood and groaned. And this was the giant god race. Their bloodlines and bodies were incredibly powerful, and both of them were at the ancient god level. Suppressing the 10,000 races? What kind of race could have such power? Zhao Feng's blood was in turmoil, and he almost vomited blood. Fortunately, his chaos origin divine power was vast, his divine stages were stable, and he had the space-time robe to protect him. Only the three half-step god lords at Yu Heng's side were not affected by the suppressing the 10,000 races. Too terrifying. The three half-step god lords gasped, the bloodlines in their bodies trembling as if they had gone out of control. All around, in just a few seconds, hundreds of millions of insects had been left behind, and with every moment, tens of millions more were being killed. In order to resist that invisible bloodline suppression, one had to have a powerful bloodline and a powerful cultivation. Ordinary stem borers had bloodlines and cultivations equivalent to ordinary true gods. Just the suppression of energy was enough to make them self-detonate. Scram! Yu Heng slowly extended a hand, sending a terrifying beam of gold-and-silver divine light toward the stem borer mother nest. At that moment, unexpectedly, his attack tore apart the time profundity of this space, as well as other restrictions. It traveled thousands of miles through space. Aya! The stem borer queen let loose a cry of shock and horror, and its gargantuan nest abruptly shattered into hundreds of millions of stem borers that fled in all directions. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In just tensome seconds, all the insects had retreated and vanished. All that was left was a thick layer of insect corpses. All things in the world were silent. At this moment, it was like only one person was left in this world, looking down on the ancient era and reigning supreme. Yu Heng's every move and thought possessed a tyrannical might that could shatter all things. At this moment, he no longer had a body of flesh and blood, nor did he have the body of a true god or an ancient god. He had transformed into an ancient god-devil. Ancestral artifact fragment, you've already consumed a great deal of your law origin. I'm afraid that you won't be able to fight against me. Yu Heng slowly walked toward the ancient fortress. In front of the ancient fortress, the ancestral artifact fragment trembled, but it did not submit. It muttered, "The ancient race duplication plan." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.